Well, hello and welcome to the January 19th, 2023 meeting of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. I'm Noah Levy, Chair, and I'm presiding tonight. Before we get started, I just wanted to call your attention to page 2 of our agenda, which outlines the various ways that you can tune in or participate in this meeting. In particular, note that if you are at a computer and wish to both watch and participate in the meeting, it's probably best to do so by Zoom. We have the information on joining Zoom here at the top of page 2. The Zoom feed is live and in real time with our meeting. You can also watch on your computer on the humboldt.legislar.com site. But if you are watching that feed, note that it's a little bit behind real time. And if you're going to comment while watching that, you're going to need to do it by phone. So make sure that you join by phone if you're not on Zoom and wish to participate. In any case, with that, we will begin the meeting, and I'll invite you to join me in a salute to the flag. Okay, with that, we come to item B, which is commissioners present. And Tripp, I will ask you to take a roll call, please.
Ivor Skobdal. Here. Noah Levy.
Here.
Brian Mitchell.
Present.
Lonix Landry. Melanie McCaver.
Here.
Peggy O'Neill.
Here.
And Thomas Mulder.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum, 6 out of 7. And I will just note that you heard the name Lonix Landry. Although he's not present here tonight, he is the newly appointed commissioner representing Natalie Arroyo's district. So he has replaced Mike Newman. I actually did not realize that change was going to happen tonight, so I did just want to take a moment to thank Mike Newman for his excellent years of service on this commission. He was somebody who really put in the work to do his job well, showed up to visit a lot of sites, and always paid attention to what the public was saying about these projects. So thank you, Mike.
He also came prepared every time.
Absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate your service. Okay, with that, it's item, oh yes, Commissioner Mulder.
I noticed someone had closed the door here. It's my understanding that the door is always supposed to be open, but just wanted to clarify that one.
Thank you for noticing that. Yes, I believe that's the case, that we always have it open, and I believe we need to, so.
I would just hate for someone to see the door closed.
Think it's,
That hallway lights off too.
yeah. Not happening. Good catch. Thanks, Thomas. Okay, with that, we come to item C, agenda modifications. And I would just ask Director Ford, who is attending by Zoom tonight, if we have any modifications to the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Levy. I apologize for not being there in person tonight. But we do want to pull item E6 off of consent. And so that can be done as part of the consent calendar, but just know that we're going to ask to have that pulled. Would also like to point out that we have supplementals for the Alexandrov application, for Punta Cana, for the Willow Creek Ventures, and also Elevated Farm Supplemental. These are all currently in Legistar and can be found there. That is the end of the modifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Ford. Okay, that brings us to item D, public comments. And this is the time in our agenda when we take comments from the public on matters that are not on our agenda. So the public, either here in person or on Zoom or by phone, can comment on anything pertaining to the Commission's jurisdiction, but not on the items that are already on our agenda. We have a separate chance to do public comment on those. I see We do have one hand up, or two hands up. Hold on, let me just switch to that. Three. Okay, so Public 7454, you're the first to go. Go ahead, it's your 3 minutes.
Ken Sawatsky. I have been speaking on a topic that does fall within the planning and building department. And the topic is a race that you have, your wonderful race, the kinetic sculpture race. And I keep delving into this because it doesn't seem to quite track that the county is not requiring a permit of some type for this particular fantastic event. Other jurisdictions, such as the city of Arcata, does require a permit, and this isn't as big a thing as I don't know how many of you were on there when Reggae on the River was going on. They had things, but we are traversing across county right-of-ways and roadways and other sections of this, and to not have a permit of some type and a liability coverage on a policy. Now, Arcata has a policy which they require this event to have. Eureka has a policy. I'm guessing that since it goes on 255, Caltrans probably has to have some kind of permitting and a liability policy. And so it just still bothersome to me. I still, no matter how much it gets explained to me, don't understand why the county doesn't. I did track this through the Arcatas, and their permit was very loose. They had a whole bunch of signatures missing on it, as far as I could tell. I addressed that the other night. And as far as risk management, you see, our city of Arcata had settled a claim out for $3.9 million. And I just find that somewhere in the county process, it's been implied to me that maybe it's not planning and building, but I still think it is. It's an event, and it should have some kind of a process. Arcata has maps and routes that are supposed to be signed by their city engineer. As far as okaying routes, that wasn't done by them. But that's a side issue. I think the county should really consider looking into following this one and finding some way for us to avoid the liability that might come with an accident, that might come, unfortunately, from a wonderful event like this. So I'm still following through on that one, still haven't reached satisfaction on that particular one. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening on this non-agendized item.
Thank you. Okay, our next public comment speaker is Public 7108. Go ahead, you can speak now.
Good evening, this is Bonnie Blackberry. I wanted to bring up an issue that I talked about at the last meeting about my concern of approving plans that have operation and cultivation plans that are different than what's described in the project description. Director Ford said it isn't unusual for applications to differ from what's being approved as things are modified according to county rules. I feel like if an applicant in county decides to modify the original plans because of county rules or whatever, inconsistent documents should be modified before it's brought before the Planning Commission for your approval. Approving projects that have plans that have conflicting information, I see it as problematic. And the record, which goes in, will contain these conflicting documents. I just feel the project description should match the cultivation and operation plans. Approving projects with inconsistent plans, then assuming that the corrections will be made sometime in the future is now not how I thought the approval process worked. And these projects that are being approved have long-lasting impacts, and the decisions for approval should be based on facts, not assumptions. So that's what I feel that the Planning Commission should be doing, and people should get their plans together before they come to you, not saying, well, we changed our project description, but we didn't get around to changing everything else. You approve it. Anyway, Those are my concerns. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that comment. And we've got one more public comment hand raised. Doug Holsclaw, you are recognized. It's your 3 minutes, but make sure this is about something that's not on our agenda tonight. Mr. Holsclaw? Can you unmute yourself? It looks like you're on Zoom, so,
Unmute.
yep,
Oh,
there you
I just wanted to make sure that the Zoom was working, as I'm a novice
Yes.
in this field.
We can hear you now, great.
Okay, thank you. Then I believe I'm waiting for item number 4.
Okay, I thought you might be, since you submitted a letter. So this is for, this time in the agenda is for comments that are not related to any of our agenda items, but stay with us and you will have a chance to raise your hand and comment on item 4 when we get there shortly, okay?
Agreed, I beg your pardon.
No problem. Okay. Is there anyone else on Zoom or on the phone that wishes to comment on matters not on our agenda? Anyone in the room wishing to comment? Okay, seeing none, then we will close public comment and move on to item E, consent agenda. Now, before we do this, we'll run through the consent agenda list of items as we always do and see which ones either a commissioner or a member of the public wishes to pull for discussion. But I just wanted to make a special note about this. At the last meeting, we had a couple of items pulled from consent, and then we had, I regret, as chair, I think a little bit of confusion or inconsistent process perhaps about how to take public comment on those items and whether or not to get a staff report on those items. And in discussing this issue with the director after the last meeting, we agreed that while once upon a time it made sense when lots and lots or even all items on consent were being pulled, it made sense to try to do an abbreviated way to answer questions about them. Since that's not the case these days, we'd prefer to try going back to what we did before, which is when an item is pulled from consent, either by a commissioner or a member of the public, let's just, when we get to that items pulled from consent, let's just treat it as any other hearing item and we'll have a staff report. We'll get the full benefit of the information that the staff has already prepared, and then we'll take comment from public in the normal way that we do. So just a heads up that's, yes, Commissioner Mulder.
And just wanted to note that if any items are pulled from consent, for those that are new to following us, it comes as item G that comes back around. So we go through it's towards the back of the meeting.
That is correct. Thanks for pointing that out. We're going to, yeah, as Commissioner Mulder said, we'll get to those items at a later point in the meeting after a couple of other already scheduled public hearings. So with that, let's go through the consent agenda. Item 1 is review and approval of the January 5th, 2022 action summary. Anyone wishing to pull this for discussion? Nope. We'll leave that on consent. Item 2 is the Bridgeville Organic Farms LLC conditional use permit and special permit. Note that this is actually, we're recommending that this be continued to February 16th. That's the staff recommendation. Does anyone, however, wish to make a comment about that item tonight? Okay, we will leave that one on consent. Item 3 is Willow Creek Ventures LLC in the Willow Creek area. Is there anyone? Okay, I do see a hand up both on the commission and in the public. So we will pull that one for a staff report and discussion later. Item 4 is the Freedley Minor Subdivision and Coastal Development Permit in Eureka. Now, I believe Mr. Holsclaw, who was on Zoom earlier, raised his hand hoping to comment on that. And I see his hand has gone back up again. So we will pull that one from consent and have a staff report and discussion of that one. Item 5 is the Punta Cana LLC conditional use permit and special permit in the Alder Point area. I see one hand up. Say that again.
In between items, I always lower all hands, and she raised it immediately.
She did. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was pertaining to this one. Okay,
I'm not certain it is pertaining, I'm just saying that's what she did.
I'm going
Okay.
to pull that item as well.
you'd like to pull that as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. Then we will pull that one for discussion as well. Moving on then to item 6 on consent, that is the Georgy Alexandrov conditional use permit and special permit.
That's the one staff recommended pulling, I believe.
Yes, which staff has already requested that we pull.
And what to David's leisure?
No, pull it from the
My
consent.
understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Johnson, is that that was to be pulled for a staff report and discussion?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, today.
okay. So,
I'd make a motion that we approve items 1 and 2 on our consent agenda.
I'd second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve items 1 and 2 on the consent agenda. Chip, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Ira Skobdal,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously, and items 1 and 2 on the consent calendar are approved. Well, I should be clear. Item 1, the minutes from January 5th are approved. Item 2, Bridgeville Organic Farms, is continued to February 16th. All right. Moving then to, we have nothing under old business, so under H, new business, we have 2 items. The first one, just want to make sure that this agenda hasn't changed. I didn't check tonight's agenda. The first item is Elevated Farms. Yep, correct. Okay, the first item is Elevated Farms special permit, which is being recommended for denial. But I will invite the staff to present a report on that.
Good evening, members of the commission. Chair Levy, I'm Stephen Santos, senior planner presenting the project. We're having some little technical difficulties. While my supervising planner is sorting that out, I will just begin, if that is all right with you.
Sure.
The matter before you today is a denial of a special permit for Elevated Farms. The project is located in the Ettersburg area, about 4.5 miles west of Bryceland. It involves a legal parcel that is 2 tax parcels totaling 240 acres with a timberland land use designation and mostly zoned TPZ, timber production zone, with some AE mixed in. And it looks like my screen share is now working, so I will hopefully be
Trip,
able to
are
use
you
that.
able to share our screen on there? Thanks.
Thank you, Cliff. All right, this is what the legal parcel configuration looks like. I was mentioning it's 2 individual tax parcels comprising 240 acres. The reason staff is recommending denial is because the application is incomplete and has been incomplete for 3 years. We accepted the application on December 31st, 2019. Within 30 days, we sent a letter to the applicant notifying them that the application was incomplete and that it could be subject to withdrawal. June 30th, 2021, I wrote another letter to the applicant outlining some of the major deficiencies in the application, requesting specific items be provided. And then on October 18th of 2022, another planner wrote a letter to the applicant saying, hey, you've got 60 days to respond to us, get us what we've requested, or we're going to take you forward for denial. The applicant did respond on towards the end of that period and requested more time. And that was essentially what we received. And I believe the applicant is here today, and that's why we scheduled this matter for a hearing and not on consent. I do want to emphasize that both the January 2020 correspondence and the October 22 correspondences included notifications that the project may be withdrawn or denied if there was a lack of response from the applicant. There is a lack of sufficient evidence to move the project forward and make the required findings to recommend approval. And on the slide on the screen now outlines several of the major missing items. Just a handful that I'll point out is we still don't have sufficient information and documentation to even write a project description and place the project in referrals. So it hasn't even gotten into that very first processing step and gone out to agencies for review and comment. We didn't receive a botanical survey to assess potential impact and mitigations. We don't know if there's sufficient water. We were unable to verify the amount of existing cultivation claimed, among a few of the items that where we lack sufficient evidence. I also want to note that there have been violations since the adoption of the first ordinance. We have timber conversion happening after 2015. A pond was constructed after 2016. And we had cultivation without permits and licenses through 2018. Staff is recommending denial. So the staff recommendation is that the commission consider the project exempt to CEQA per section 15270. Make the finding the applicant has not provided sufficient evidence necessary to make the required findings for approval and to deny the special permit. Before I conclude, I just want to add sort of as a personal note that, staff does not take the decision to bring something forward for denial, lightly. And it's a tough conversation to have with applicants, but at some point we do have to make a decision and bring these projects forward for decision. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks. Okay. Comments or commissioners? Questions from commissioners for the staff.
Okay, two questions. The first one I will bring up because it was from your staff report. I saw in that highlight it said conversion after 2015. Do we know if that conversion was post 2016 or just post 2015? Because from my understanding is the baseline is January 1, 2016.
Yeah, pardon for that typographical error. It's after 2015. Okay, so it happened we believe it happened in 2016. Yeah, and the RPF, there is a RPF assessment that we did receive that's incomplete, that did note that there was conversion after baseline, but did not quantify how much was converted after baseline, and that was one of the missing items. And there were additional conversion areas that were not assessed as part of that RPF report.
Thank you. And then this other question that I had originally, back to this email that was received on December 19th of 22. I see something about archaeological report, 1600 water board, and biological report. Has any of those information been submitted to the county?
So some of the items mentioned in the applicant's December 19, 2022 email, we did receive as part of the original application package on December 31st, 2019. But the application was still incomplete, and that was one of the some of the grace that the department extended the applicant, because December 31st, 2019 was the very last day applicants could apply for existing. And so even though the application was incomplete and there were still violations that had been unresolved, we extended the courtesy to take in the application with the understanding that the violations would be resolved and we'd get the rest of the application, and we never did.
Okay, I read that part. Thank you. So what I hear you, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, is since the original incomplete application, there hasn't been new information, is what I heard you say. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thanks. Yes, Commissioner Scovdell.
Again, question for staff, and I think I just heard the answer to my question, but I'm going to ask it again. Should we deny the application, will the applicant have an opportunity to resubmit at some point in the future?
That's an excellent question. And in this case, the answer is no, for two reasons. One is the deadline to submit for existing cultivation passed at the end of 2019. And then the other barrier is this parcel is located in an impacted watershed. So applying for new in the AE portions of the parcel are also prohibited by the CCLUO because of the impacted watershed. Even if the parcel was not in an impacted watershed, in my opinion, we would not be able to process the application because of the topography of the parcel and being able to meet the requirement of having new cultivation in areas of slopes 15% or less.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from or questions from commissioners for the staff before we do open it up for public comment?
I just wanted to ask, Mr. Chairman, what if this project is denied, and they are found through the aerial imaging and other tools that our teams, enforcement teams have, are they immediately subject to potential enforcement action, or do we know if they're even still cultivating?
They are not cultivating at this time, and as part of the project closure process, if there are still outstanding violations, which there are, the property would be referred to our code enforcement unit for additional investigation and then follow up with the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mulder.
I did hear staff mention that the applicant may be present in person or via Zoom. Just wanted to make sure we were going to offer that.
Yep. No, thanks for the reminder. Sure. No, if we, are there any, I just want to make sure there's no other questions initially from commissioners for the staff. And we will, of course, have a chance to discuss more later. But at this time, then, I am going to bring us to public comment on this item, and I will begin by noting that the applicant is here in the room, or, okay. So we have the applicant here, and you, sir, may come up and have more than 3 minutes. You can have, 10 minutes or even a little more to present the case for this application. That's your right as the applicant. So go ahead.
All right, perfect. Hello, thank you so much for, having me here today. I'm Paul DeBale. I'm a resident of Humboldt County. I understand the permit has not moved forward as it should have. There's a number of reasons, including our financial difficulties, condition, and my personal issues that I've had dealing with. We do have additional items complete that have been requested by the county on June 30th, 2022. Additionally, we have completed a lengthy biological assessment completed by Natural Resource Management, which I can present to you guys. Additional timberland resource consultants have been hired to complete the timber conversion requirements. The county has requested the combining of the parcels and the plot plan, operation plan, and being I know that I haven't been perfect, but we intend to move forward fast and complete the application. We owe consultants money, obviously, and so that's why we haven't gone forward with a lot of things. But we have completed a lot of things also. And I would like to have a request of a 90-day extension, continuous. And it's, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yep.
Okay. I want to keep us moving to see if there's other, if you have a question, Commissioner Mulder. Yeah.
Through the chair, my question, I believe I heard you say that in June of 2022, there was some sort of biological assessment. Have you submitted that to the county?
No, I have not.
Okay. Do you have a copy of that? You could.
It's right here.
Okay. So what I hear you possibly saying is there may be additional information?
Yes, I have like an archaeologist report also, and my pond report that I've done from other consultants. So I hired like 5 different consultants to do all this work, and I haven't turned it into the county yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner O'Neill.
Why wouldn't you turn it into the county?
Because of just during COVID, I've been really sick and my health hasn't been there, and I haven't really been able to be out in the open with other people.
So basically you would like a hardship request because of your health?
That could be good. Commissioner
McCaver.
Thank you. And the 90 days, do you feel that's enough? Or are you
I mean, 90 days
aiming
could
low
be
because you think that maybe that's better? But I'm just wondering what the feasible
I'm just aiming low,
timeframe.
but I could more time would be better. But I'm just trying to get it done quicker.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other commissioners with questions for the applicant? Commissioner Scavdell.
I think it's important for the planning department and for us to see evidence of progress and commitment to follow through on the completion of your application, whether it's 90 days or longer or shorter. I don't think that's as important as a commitment to move forward and continue to make progress and continue to engage with staff in responding to their questions to make sure that we can get the application complete in as short as time as possible. So that's what I'm looking for is a commitment from you to pursue the project, engage, and not disappear for months at a time between letters from staff.
Well, I understand. It's just, the last couple of years, COVID just been really, really hard on everybody. So especially on me.
I understand. I'm asking for the commitment going forward.
Oh, yes,
I'm not
yes.
looking
I
backwards.
would do the commitment.
Okay. We do have another hand up in the public. When we bring it back to the commission for discussion, and discuss it with staff, if we need to ask further questions of the applicant, we can do so. So you can have a further chance to speak later.
Okay, perfect.
But if you have nothing further for us right now, and if we have no other questions from the commission.
I have my hand up, Mr. Chairman.
I'm so sorry, Brian. Commissioner Mitchell, go ahead.
No problem. So my question would be to the applicant. At what point did you become associated with this project?
In 2019.
In 2019. So there was about a year at least before COVID got started. Is there any reason why you didn't proceed with the outstanding items, before COVID was problematic for people?
I guess just with personal, issues I've had.
Do you care to elaborate on that, or are you saying?
No, I would not like to.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Commissioner McCaver?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess, we're hearing that there was something received the 31st of December 2019, and then COVID, I believe, I remember was March 7th, was it? 2020? So just a few months after that.
I was actually sick before, when my fine was due, I was actually sick during that time of COVID, before even COVID even was COVID. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I was sick.
and that was just a comment on that, but I did have a question, which was that I was wondering if it would be okay with staff if we were to see the documents that the applicant has with him.
I would be happy to examine the documents that the applicant brought with him. The documents that I can see and that were described were actually documents we received as part of the application. So when it comes to the biological component, the missing piece we have is we don't have a seasonally appropriate floristic study. We don't have the botanical study. That has not been done. So if the Planning Commission considers and decides to grant more time, it should factor in the season and the time it takes to do a botanical study. But I am happy to examine those documents, but the ones that were described, the archaeological study, the NRM report that I saw the cover for, we already have that.
Oh, okay.
As part
There's
of
nothing new.
as part of the staff's review and decision on whether to recommend denial, I reached out to one of the project agents and asked if there was anything in the works, if anything was forthcoming, and I was told no, because bills were unpaid.
I see. I thought there were new documents. Thank you.
So, Mr. Dubiel, the documents that you just held up, those are actually older documents that have already been submitted to the staff?
I wasn't sure if they were submitted or not. This work was done in 2019.
Okay. All right, well, if you have nothing further, there are a couple of other hands up, and we're in public comment right now. So
All right, perfect.
if we have further comments, or if we have further questions for you later, we can call you up for a further discussion.
All right.
But
All right.
I'm going to
Thank you.
then continue public comment, and the next caller is Public 7454. Go ahead, it's your 3 minutes.
Ken Sawatsky, I'm sorry that the applicant, the farmer, is having health issues. It seems to be not only health issues, but possibly financial issues. That's why we obviously don't have any consultants here that could have probably done the project for the applicant. Otherwise, that would be going forward. So just my questions for staff would be, and you don't mind, to the chair, you can ask or whatever, was this permit was there ever an interim permit on this? Or has there been no activity on this site since the original application was submitted in whatever it was, 2016 or whatever? And if there has been any cultivation, has the Measure S taxes been paid on this? That would be another relevant question. I think that the public, has a right to know the financial end of this a little bit because of the circumstance. And then also, are there any outstanding debts that have to do with the application process? Should you decide at this time to go ahead and consider moving forward with an extension of time, I would feel that some form of a cash bond or something else should be put in place as far as earnest money to move forward with this kind of a project under the circumstances. It doesn't appear that there's been any attempt to correct the violations, and being it health or financial issues, if there's a chance of this moving forward, you would have to have the money prove that you have the money to move forward. Otherwise, there's no way the consultants will finish up the project. And without their commitment, the consultants saying we're willing to finish this, pro bono or wait for our money, I really can't see anything other than following staff's recommendation at this time and doing a denial. If I were doing a subdivision and I came in and had a lot of problems financially or maybe health or something and had to meet a deadline for some kind of a map being drawn and submitted, a tentative map or something, and hadn't done so, I'm guessing I would be pulled out of the queue as far as that goes. And that's what I recommend is staff recommendation here, that you go ahead and deny the project unless those mitigating factors as far as financial proof that it can move forward be given. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Swatsky, and the staff is making note of your question, so perhaps we can get, I'm going to take the other comment first, and then if you have any further information based on public comment, you can provide it. Thank you. The last hand I see up is Kessie Jordan. Go ahead.
It sounds like the county already knew there was violations. Why did they accept the application fee for this applicant? It doesn't seem like everything in this process is very expensive, regardless of how much time that's given. I've worked on a lot of these applications, and a lot of times we don't get responses from the county, so it's kind of unfair to say he goes months when there's times the county goes months and loses paperwork, and he's already spent a lot of money, obviously, if he's already got an ARC survey, he's paid the application fee, which a lot of times is what, $5,168. So he's out all that money. He should be given a little more time. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I see one more hand up in the public. I also see your hand up, Commissioner Mitchell. Did you want to did you want to comment while we're still doing public comment, or? No.
I had another question for the applicant. I don't know if it's too late for that, but based on the public comments, it's raised the question of whether the applicant can show that he has the financial resources in order to meet the timeline that he's proposing.
Okay, well, we will, let's save the discussion until we get through public comment. One more hand is up. I see that's Holly Carter. Go ahead, Ms. Carter. It's your 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey, I'm always testing the technology. Thank you. And my comment is partially for staff and partially for the applicant, if it is okay to say this. But speaking of financial pieces and what Kessie brought up about the already costs that have been put in, I would encourage the applicant and the staff, if the extension is granted, to have a really frank conversation about what conditions will be placed on this property. I heard Steven Santos express some concerns about it being non-qualified for new, so to try to wrap his head around whether or not, once it's approved, even past all the costs of application, the mitigation costs for like continuing to cultivate and the timelines that would be needed there are taken into consideration, and that's just like a friendly shout out for the applicant. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public, either on Zoom, on phone, or in the room, who would wish to comment? Okay, I do see one more hand up. Okay, sure. Nicholas Lewis, go ahead. Oh, what's that? You had to promote. You're muted, Mr. Lewis. We can see you, but can't hear you.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay, just briefly, I just want to say I know Mr. Dubier, and I think it should at least be stated. I think he's probably spent $30,000 to $40,000 on consultants and paid the abatement, which I think was very expensive as well. I just think it's important to note that. you know, that there has been a lot of effort made on his part. That's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Mr. Dubio, as the applicant, we do give you a chance to come back up after other public comment has been said if you have anything more to add.
Okay.
I mean, now would be your chance, is what I'm saying. I'm not sure that, you know, if there was anything that had come up from the other comments that you wish to respond to or answer questions that have been asked, that would be your right.
Yeah, I mean, after the abatements, obviously, I was not allowed to grow anymore. So pretty much my financial situation was, my finances were really hard at that time, especially being invaded I had 2 APNs, so they invaded me for one parcel, but 2 APNs. So they invaded me $30,000 for each parcel. So I had to end up spending $60,000 at my Edisburg property to pay code enforcement back, or to get into this processing right now. So just that alone, me paying that abatement, took a lot of my money to go forward with the whole processing of getting all my application, all my consultants all paid off.
Understood.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you for that additional information. All right. Seeing no additional hands up in the public, I am now going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Mulder?
I just have one direct question for the applicant. If the applicant could please come to the podium.
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt you when he was up there.
I'm so sorry.
So during your testimony, I heard you state that you had some assessments done in June of 2022, and that information has been yet to be submitted to the county. Is there any way you have like any verification that you could show us tonight that some sort of assessment was done in June of 2022, so there could be some sort of progress forward shown at this hearing tonight?
No, I do not have it with me right now.
Can you?
Well, I owe the consultants money, so they kind of want to get paid before they give me the work they've done.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate what I'm hearing is that you had some assessments done, but the report is at a consultant's office until an outstanding debt is paid. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right.
Any other, yes, sir, stay up here. We have one other question from a commissioner.
My comment is, you know, you can say 90 days, but if he needs 6 months or whatever he needs, because some of these studies can maybe only be done at certain times of the year. It may take 60 days just to get a contract or to pay for an existing study that, you know, I don't know if you have the resources now than you didn't before. But if we're going to grant a hardship or whatever we want to call it, extension, I think we need to give him enough time to do what he needs to do and not make him spend a whole bunch of money and go, up, your 90 days is up, too bad, you know, you're into this another 60,000, but time's up. You need to be honest and say, this is the amount of time I think I need, and also to provide evidence as you go along that you're making progress. And I don't know if that's a schedule that can come up with, but I know contracting with a consultant, it is expensive. It's not always on your time frame, it can be theirs. Sometimes it's hard to find one that's not busy. So I think that's for us to discuss. If we're going to give him an extension, don't just say, well, you get 30 days or 60 days. You need to give him an extension that will be successful in accomplishing what he needs to accomplish. And you need to be honest with us and say, I don't have the resources to do this in 90 days. It's going to take me 9 months or whatever, and because if you come back,
well, obviously the botanical assessment, obviously it's not going to be done until I guess in the spring if I don't have it. I thought it was in this report, but I guess it's not in this report.
Right, but if you don't have the resources in 90 days, don't tell us, okay, give me 90 days, because then when you come back to us, we're going to not believe you when you say, well, I need 90 days more. Just get what you need or ask for what you really need.
Okay.
to be able to financially accomplish what you need to accomplish. Because we'll just not believe you if you come back and say, well, I didn't get anything done, but give me some more time. You
Right.
know, so be realistic with this.
So like 6 months or something, you're saying?
Whatever you think you need, because
Okay,
you know
yeah,
your
I'm
own
grant,
health,
but
your
if you
own
guys can grant me
resources.
more months, that would be really ideal.
Okay, understood. Thank
right,
you.
thank
I want to recognize, you can take a seat now, sir. I don't think we have any more questions for you, but Director Ford, your hand is up, so I'd like to recognize you.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to allow staff to respond to some of the questions that were asked and some of the points that were made during the public comment, because I think they're germane.
Thank you. Great suggestion. I did want to come back to that. So, Mr. Santos, could you respond to some of those questions that have been asked or points that have been made?
Thank you, Chair Levy, and if I leave anything out, please direct me accordingly. There was a question of whether there was ever an interim permit. The answer is no. Therefore, there is no tax liability in play. There was a question of whether there's outstanding debts with regard to the county. The answer to that is yes. Technically, resolving the code enforcement matter for the cultivation that was done without permits or licenses is not fully closed because the invoice for that, while fines have been paid, the invoice for staff time has not been paid, and it has gone so long it's now in collections. The question was asked, why did we accept the application when there were outstanding violations? We accepted the application because that was a request that was made of the department, and the department had the discretion to consider whether to grant a courtesy to accept it while there are still unresolved violations. And because we had reached the deadline for application, we thought it was the appropriate thing to do was to allow them to apply and not miss that deadline. There was also issues brought up in terms of the discussion around financial impacts, and not just on the front end. There's financial impacts post-approval. There will be expenses if this project ever does make it to approval. There's going to be restoration required for this. There's going to be engineers required for this, for the building permits. There's going to be expenses after a land use permit is approved. Absolutely, there will be. And then just a couple of other things. There was mention of there being two tax parcels and being abated on both parcels. There was cultivation going on both tax parcels, and that's why there was abatement on both of the tax parcels. And lastly, I do want to share that I was a little bit surprised to hear that there was some report or assessment, I don't know what topic, done in June of 2022. I've had many conversations with the applicant in the last month or so, and it has never been mentioned that such a thing was done. I said, hey, that's one of the things you can give us in your response to the letter we sent you in October to show that, this has been worked on in the interim. So I'd love to know, what that is and see what the topic is. I think that was all the questions.
Yeah, through the chair, if you don't mind, I just want to add one of the questions that I think was asked by the public, and Mr. Santos addressed, I think, most of that, was why, the county accepted the application. But as Mr. Dubiel mentioned, the property was abated, and so it was being cultivated without permits. The application was intended to help address the abatement because there is infrastructure and other things on the property that ordinarily would be required to be removed. We do typically allow people to keep some of that there if it looks like there may be a permit path. And so, at the applicant's request, we did actually accept an application, and the application itself is intended in some manner to address those violations.
Thank you. That is helpful. Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair to staff, I just want to make sure my notes are correct, because I'm trying to talk through this and make sure we're all have realistic expectations, even if it was given a 90-day. What I'm hearing is there's a biological assessment needed, a conversion evaluation needed, grading plan type thing needed, road evaluations, and I think there was like 2 or 3 others, and I want to hear those if I'm missing some of those.
Through the chair, yes, we do need additional biological assessment in the form of a seasonally appropriate floristic study, a botanical study. We need an updated site plan that accurately depicts the project. We need an updated operations plan that comprehensively describes the project and addresses all of the elements of the CCLUO. We need an analysis of the proposed on-site relocation. We need a corresponding restoration plan to go along with that analysis. We need a supplement or an addendum to that timber conversion assessment to assess the areas that weren't included in the original assessment and then quantify the conversion that happened after baseline. We need additional evidence to justify the amounts of existing cultivation claimed by the applicant. That's just to name a few that I have off the top of my head and with the notes in front of me.
Thank you. Can I do a follow-up to that?
Yes.
And then I just wanted to, from what I heard, everything, this was under the CCLUO, and this is TBZ zone land. So in this proposal, I see that they're asking for generators, but everything I remember of the CCLUO is there's no generator use on TPZ parcels. So what I'm hearing is they would also need an energy plan that's all renewable energy. And being as there's no hydrological study with the well, possibly, and it talks about rain catchment, they'd also need rain catchment with the project, possibly.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so I'm going to try to do some rough numbers. That seems expensive. Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Well, just along the lines of what Commissioner Mulder was just pulling together, I'd be curious to know if the applicant has a budget for bringing the project from the point that it's at now, paying all the past due vendors and unpaid fees by the county, all the additional studies that need and costs for any infrastructure that is not already on site currently. Is that something that the applicant has calculated and has either a letter of credit from a or funds that can show us that it's realistic financially? This will be done.
Commissioner Mitchell, you're breaking up there at the end, but I think we got the gist of your question. I will allow the applicant to come back up one more time if he would, because I'd like to ask him that question. It seems to me that quite apart from time and our willingness to bend the rules around the timing and give you a period of time, there's a tremendous amount of money that will be involved if we're going to bring this permit realistically to completion. And I guess we'd like to hear from you if you have put together a budget, if you have an estimate of what that will cost, and if you have a realistic means of raising the money to pay that cost.
Yes, somewhat I do. I have liquidated a few of my assets that I've had in the past, so I'm thinking it's going to roughly cost me around $60,000 to finish everything off.
Okay, that's your estimate, $60,000?
I think so. Yeah, that's what I had in assets, so I ended up that's what I ended up with. So if it's going to cost me that much, then I will finish the project without all that.
Okay. Commissioner Mulder.
Just a clarifying question. Are you understanding the difference between bringing the project to decision and then the conditions of approval? I believe it was Ms. Carter that spoke on that some projects have been imposed with, for you, I would see like in your original thing, it says a generator is your power source. But being under the CCLUO, you can't use generator power on TPZ parcel. Do you have a plan and a budget in place for renewable energy if it was brought to decision?
Well, I don't have a plan quite yet, but we were thinking of doing solar, obviously, on the property from the past. So we were wanting to get away from the generators.
Okay.
In 2019, anyways. So we didn't really want to. We wanted to go with renewable energy.
Can I ask one more follow-up question?
Yes, please.
If you were granted, say, 30 days, like say there was a motion that went out today that you were granted the decision on this project was continued 30 days, and in that time you had to present staff with a realistic timeline and budget of how you would bring this project to the finish line. Is that something you could believe you could fulfill?
Within the 30 days?
Within 30 days to show progress, because I mean, I'm looking at staff and I want to respect them. I've seen multiple emails that just aren't responded to. So trying to respect applicants and staff at the same time, if you were given, say, 30 days to show a budget and a timeline, how you would meet that, and then you could, from that 30 days, if you met that first 30 days, you could be granted, this possible 6 months is what I was hearing down here.
That's possible. That's doable.
Okay. That's all my questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. While I have him up here, while the applicant is up here, I don't want to keep going back and forth. So last chance for questions for the applicant from commissioners? No?
I have a follow-up to my last question. If I understood the applicant correctly, his budget was $60,000 because he had. It didn't sound like he said, I went through everything that will be done, and this is how much I think it's going to cost versus how much I have. Did I hear you correctly?
Commissioner Mitchell, unfortunately,
That your budget's based on...
Brian, unfortunately, you're not coming through clearly. I'm sorry. I wasn't really able to understand that. Were you guys? No. Yeah, no, sorry.
I think I kind of heard that he was calling into question the $60,000 liquidation and the lack of reports due to not having the funds to pay them. And that did cross my mind. However, I can totally understand that somebody in their position might not want to pay to get the reports until they were sure that they had an application that was going forward. But again, I don't know if that's what Commissioner Mitchell was saying.
Commissioner O'Neill, you were starting to ask.
That was sort of along the lines of what I was going to say. 60,000 doesn't seem like enough to do all of this unless you've already started and have some progress on it. I don't know what, you probably know, Thomas, more than I do what these reports cost. I know what I paid for reports, and you also have some abatement charges that you still have to pay.
Yeah, it was only, that's like $4,500.
So I don't know if 60,000 is going to be enough or not, but what I just don't want to see you do is spend all your 60,000 and then we go, oops, you didn't make it. And so now you're out that money too. So that's why whatever we decide to do, whether it's yes or no, it needs to be realistically something you can accomplish and that you are showing progress so that you don't just spend a whole bunch more money and then we turn you down.
Exactly. I wouldn't want that either.
Okay, Commissioner McCaver.
Well, I guess just on that note, could we perhaps ask Planner Santos if the planner thinks that the 60,000 is feasible?
Through the chair, That's not a question that I have knowledge that I could answer effectively for you, so I apologize. Yeah, I'm not in the consulting realm, so I don't know what the costs are, but there's still quite a bit of work and quite a number of professionals that need to get involved.
Okay, well, I think we've asked you enough questions, sir, if we're done with that. Let's bring it back and try to figure out what we want to do here. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Mulder. Well, Cliff, did you have your hand up?
I was just trying to
John
flag that the director.
Thank you. I didn't
was
see that. Thanks. I'd love to hear from Director Ford before we continue our deliberation.
Thank you, Chair. The $60,000 may be enough. The thing that we don't know is how much he already owes his consultants for the work that has been done and how much more he's going to have to pay to bring the reports up to a status that they actually answer the questions. In terms of processing the application with the county, that will be a part of that, but not a major part. I think somebody has brought up that there is the cost of implementing the conditions of approval also, and there is a timber conversion issue that is still somewhat unresolved. There are biological issues that are still unresolved. There's probably years worth of monitoring if a plan is developed and implemented. So I would expect the long-term cost of getting a project approved at this site to exceed $60,000. Aside from that, I would just like to point out that one of the things that's going on here is we've had discussions between staff and the Planning Commission about these projects where we've had unresponsive applicants. And the agreement is that where there is contention, where an applicant doesn't want the project to be denied for lack of progress, that it would be acted on by the zoning administrator unless the applicant is contesting that. In this case, the applicant is contesting that. One of the things I would ask the commission to consider is whether or not the planning department has given the applicant sufficient time to make a good faith effort to complete the application and move forward. I know there's always financial realities, there's always hardships, but there's always ways to get things done too. So one of the things that the commission is really faced with right now in this decision is the message that it's going to send to other applicants, and there's probably about 300 of them that are in similar circumstances, is whether or not they are going to take seriously a letter from the Planning and Building Department indicating that they are about to be in a situation where their application is going to be taken forward for denial if they don't provide the information, or whether or not they're going to wait and come and plead their case, plead hardship, to the commission with the expectation that then they'll get more time. This costs staff time. Many of these applications are out of money, they're out of funds, there is no more money on deposit. This is basically at the department's expense to get these projects acted on and resolved. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Director Ford. Commissioner Mulder, you were starting to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, I appreciate what the director said, because hearing everything in this hearing tonight is one thing, but then hearing that there's 300 more behind this, and I hear a leader saying, hey, my staff needs to be supported and they need to be able to do efficient things with their time. So it's kind of shifted where my thought process is going. And I got to gather my thoughts a little bit more, because I'm rereading my notes, and what the director said, it kind of really shifted, that 300 number really shifted my thought process.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll just, okay. Go ahead.
If you don't mind,
Commissioner Scavdon.
I'll make some comments on this. The applicant first came to us December 31st, 2019, the last day to apply with an incomplete application, but was given the opportunity to come in. So I had one grace issued already. 3 years later, December 19th, 2022, came on the last day to respond to multiple letters from the county. Came in on the last day with an email requesting an extension. Came here tonight, no schedule, no list of work to do, no budget, no real business plan. And I really didn't hear anything to suggest we're going to be in a different position here 30 days, 90 days, 6 months from now. I think the applicant has a very difficult project. The project has a lot of challenges. Continuing forward doesn't ensure that he's going to get to approval of this board. And even if he does get to approval of this board, doesn't assure he's going to be able to meet the conditions that are imposed on the project. So I didn't hear anything that's going to compel me to disagree with the staff position on this one.
Thank you. I see you, Commissioner Mitchell, but I just wanted to sort of get a word in. I've been sort of holding back comment until we could hear everything we might hear from the applicant. But I think, honestly, even without the director's comments, I don't have the confidence that this applicant has the means to complete this application, complete this project within the budget that he has, especially with the outstanding debts to the county and to consultants that are already needing to be paid. I really would like to be sympathetic, but I think that under the circumstances and under the number of times that the county has kind of given an extension already or used its discretion to try to accommodate this application, we would need to see more. That a realistic timeline, a realistic budget, for me to believe that this is possible to do. And it just brings to mind the expression of throwing good money after bad. I think somebody alluded to that, to extend the lifeline and invite him to spend another $60,000 on something that doesn't seem realistic to complete with that budget is not doing him a service. So, Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The comment that wasn't coming through earlier was that what I heard from the applicant was his budget was based on how much he could come up with as opposed to how much each item costs. And we've heard from many other applicants that the solar or alternative energy is a pricey thing, so they need many years to fund that. So if we just think of how much, if we ignore all the debts, stuff he's in arrears on, and just look at all the studies that need to be done and all the things that will need to be mitigation measures that budgeted for, I just don't see, that's not how you do a budget, basically. And I believe and feel that this project was already given its one, favor when we accepted on the last day an application that wasn't complete. And substantively, very little has been done. And it seems like the only thing that motivates action is the threat of outright denial. And I don't see that pattern changing.
Commissioner McCaver.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think this is kind of a unique situation. Usually when we have requests for denial, it's very clear. There's usually the applicant is completely disengaged and often not even present. And so, for some of us, it is a sympathetic situation, it's sympathetic character, kind of unique that way. But, objectively, which is our job, it's not a promising case. And so I agree with my fellow commissioners on those points that were just raised.
Thanks. I see.
Someone suggested maybe giving the applicant 30 days to come up with his plan and his budget, and maybe in that process, you will come to the realization that you really don't want to move forward. That's another alternative to a flat-out denial, because if you go and get quotes on these studies, and I'm not even sure if you even knew what all you needed to do, in 30 days and came back, to staff and said, okay, I've reassessed, and it's gonna cost me $230,000 and not 60, and I don't really have $230,000, and the consultants I've talked to are gonna take 18 months and not 90 days, you might come to the realization that you don't want to put any more money into a project. So that's an alternative to flat-out denial. It's coming to that, getting those realistic cost estimates and including in your budget what it's going to cost to pay for the reports that you still need. You might just go, forget it, it's not worth it.
Commissioner.
Or somebody might,
Oh,
your
sorry.
best friend might show up with a bunch of money and be willing to pay for it, I don't know.
Yep. Commissioner Mulder?
So there's a lot. So I flipped back over to my original notes that I took on this, and I wrote, for me, it supports staff. It's a sad story, but also needs accountability. And then I asked myself to listen if there's a different message during the hearing. And is the stuff in the email actually submitted that was on December 19th? So I go back through my thought process. I'm not really hearing a different message than what I heard from my fellow commissioners and the staff is like information isn't continually submitted. And so I have a few questions for staff. The first one is going to be, if there was an assessment submitted on December 19th of 2022, would we still be here today?
Prior to, through the chair, prior to receiving the email from the applicant, I had several conversations with the applicant at the front counter in person, by phone, and I gave very specific coaching on what would make good content for the written response that was forthcoming. And I suggested, give us an implementation schedule, describe the things that you have been doing the last 3 years. So that coaching was provided before the December 2022 email was sent.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And where I'm going with the potential idea of maybe 30 days for, just postpone this decision for 30 days for them to show an app, a budget and all those kind of things. If that was, would there be any negative effects to the environment as this project currently isn't cultivating?
None other than that the violations and unresolved and unaddressed issues that are present now would just continue.
That are the existing code enforcement stuff that has to be cleaned up, correct?
Right, yeah, the grading, the pond, yeah, the timber conversion. So
Okay.
it would just be a continuation of existing circumstances.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've spent quite a while on this one, and we do have 5 more items to get to tonight. So I would suggest we try to move this forward. Commissioner Mitchell.
I would like to move staff recommendation to deny or reject the application.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do we want to discuss that motion further before we vote on it? Commissioner Mulder.
Just entertain the idea of 30 days for them to come forward with a budget and a realistic plan to staff. But a lot of patience has been granted as well. I'm well aware of that. So even if this does go forward, the applicant still has the ability to file for an appeal and go through it that way. And that might actually be another way to show good faith of trying to move forward with the project. So that might be a better way to go.
Okay, you do have the ability procedurally to offer an amendment if you wanted to go there. Just since we have those rules to practice.
I think me discussing the procedures of what would happen if this project was denied made the motion makers definitely more cemented into their motion because it kind of actually sounded like a, actually, I'm not going to put words, but the motion on the table is probably pretty strong.
I appreciated your remarks, Commissioner Mulder, and it is reassuring to know that if the applicant is indeed serious, then that appeal can be made.
Yep. Okay, then we have a motion and a second, and Trip, could we have a roll call vote?
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Ivor Scobdell,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. The application is denied. All right, and with that, it's 7:20. I believe we should take a short recess. Let's take 10 minutes and come back at 7:30 sharp and continue.
Recording stop.
Thank you. We are now coming out of recess and returning to the January 19th meeting of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. And we still have quite a bit left to get to on this agenda. So our next item is going to be H2, that is Renewable America LLC conditional use permit in the Arcata area. And I would invite a staff report, please.
Good evening, Commission. Chair Levy, my name is Rodney Allen Yandel. I'm going to present the Renewable America LLC Foster Clean Power Solar Project this evening that's in the Arcata area. The project, my laser pointer is not working. Oh, here we go. The project is located here where you can see the sun. I put a little sun on there to indicate it's a solar project. It's located in between Foster and 27th Avenue, west of Arcata in the Arcata Bottoms. This project is a conditional use permit for a two-phased 7-megawatt community-scale solar energy and storage project. The proposed solar arrays would cover 30 acres at full build-out, and the project will include a 5-megawatt battery storage system that will be located on a 5,000 square foot cement pad. The project will connect to PG&E's existing Arcata 12 kilovolt distribution line on Foster Avenue that connects to the Arcata substation at 6th Street and I Street in Arcata. Construction for each phase would take approximately 4 months, with phase 2 occurring 2 years after phase 1. Access during construction would be provided via Foster Avenue. 10 to 20 employees will be needed for normal construction activities with a maximum of 50 during peak construction activities. There would be a maximum of 50 vehicle trips per day during peak construction activities. This project will be decommissioned after 35 years and the site will be returned to its pre-project condition. The project includes a pollinator habitat program with the purpose of continuing organic agricultural activities at the site. Other agricultural activity uses on the property may include but not be limited to grazing and the keeping of honeybees. This project incorporates these ag uses to achieve no net loss of ag land in accordance with the county's general plan, in addition to conformance with the organic farming easement that covers approximately 75% of the project site. This map here, my laser pointer doesn't work on the screen, so I'll just describe it. The area that's blue is phase 1. That's 12 acres of solar panels. And that green rectangle you see there in the middle is the equipment pad that I described earlier. In this slide, you'll see on the north, you'll see the solar panels in blue. And that would be phase 2, and that is 18 acres. and the two together would total the 30 that I previously mentioned. A mitigated negative declaration was put together for this project, and several technical reports were submitted, including a biological resource assessment, a wetland delineation report, FEMA letter of map amendment, and a Phase 1 environmental assessment. Mitigation measures came out of the CEQA document that was prepared for land use planning, agricultural and forestry resources, biological resources, cultural resources, tribal cultural resources, geology, and soils. These mitigation measures include an agricultural management plan, pre-construction nesting bird surveys, pre-construction northern red-legged frog clearance surveys, and protection of aquatic resources. Other mitigation measures include archaeological monitoring and inadvertent discovery protocols for archaeological resources and paleontological resources. Before we circulated the CEQA document, we held a neighborhood outreach meeting. The neighborhood outreach meeting was held on Zoom on November 16th, 2022. The meeting invite was mailed out to approximately 210 addresses within 1,500 feet of the parcel boundaries. Of those who were invited, 5 attended. An introduction to the project was delivered by staff, and a project presentation was given by the applicant. After the presentation, there were no questions or concerns raised by the attendees, and the meeting was then adjourned. I'd like to point out that mailing list that included the 210 addresses. We used that same one to circulate the CEQA document, and we used the same one to notice this meeting here tonight. So it was very broad noticing for this project. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt the Renewable America LLC Foster Clean Power Project Mitigated Negative Declaration, make all required findings for approval of the conditional use permit, and adopt the resolution approving the Renewable America LLC conditional use permit, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions for Rodney? Yes, go ahead.
I just was curious about the 35 years and then you removed the project. Why did they do that?
I don't know.
Mr. Johnson?
Through the chair, that basically we need some indication of the project's life to really do a proper analysis. And so what we understand from the applicant is that a typical solar facility like this would last up to 35 years.
But would they have the option of renewing it at that time, or just the equipment will only last that long?
Well, so as it is contemplated right now, the site would need to be restored back to its pre-project condition. But in the event that there is a desire to continue that or to do something different, there would need to be another application that would come before the Planning Commission.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Scabdell.
Yeah, a couple of questions. The report refers to how the panels are going to be cleaned, and there's a dry cleaning method and in some cases using water. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm of the assumption that dry cleaning might mean brooming or brushing or just wiping them down, but I just need to know, are there any cleaning agents used in the dry process or the wet process for cleaning panels?
The answer is no for both. I did see a video, the dry cleaning process, they use a robot, and it's like a rotating, apparatus that's similar to what you might see in a car wash you drive through. If in fact they got so dirty that was not going to work for them, that they would apply water, but no chemicals are proposed.
A follow-up question on the decommissioning. I see we have a decommissioning plan.
Yes.
That we're going to get. Project has a 35-year life. A lot of things change over that 35 years, owners or other issues. What do we have to ensure that the decommissioning actually takes place per the decommissioning plan? How do we implement those?
Do you want that? Or you want me to? Yeah, I got it. You got it? Yeah, I mean, we have their project description and their approval of this permit. They have to adhere to their project description. So if they're not going to adhere to their project description, they would have to apply for some kind of modification or something of that nature, unless you have something more to add.
Yeah, just to clarify, at the end of 35 years, let's say that they're no longer in the picture, they don't want to remove it or something. I mean, at that point, if no modifications to the application are submitted and come in front of the county, that turns into a code enforcement issue. And so then the county does have the ability to pursue abatement, and the property owner may in fact be liable for that at that point.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Is there any precedent for requiring surety bonds of project applicants or other type of financial mechanisms to give greater assurance for something that far out on the time horizon?
There is. That's something that the county typically does with our surface mine projects, and so there definitely is precedent for that. I will note that, or at least I did see Director Ford's hand was up, but I think that went down. But again, that is something that the county has done in the past, and we could add that as a condition to require surety.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I just wanted to ask specifically, I don't remember if that was done for the solar project in Blue Lake. Do you recall if there was a bond required associated with the decommissioning plan?
I believe there was, and I didn't study that project in depth, but I believe that was born from, was it the agriculture group? It was from a group that was interested in the project and the loss of grazing land and things of that nature, and I think that they were part of requesting or making sure that there was some assurance bond associated with the project.
In other words, are you saying that was negotiated with the applicant? You're not sure?
I'm not exactly positive. That was my colleague Josh Doris's project.
Okay.
And, but I think it was born from some concerns from that group, which we did send a referral to that group and did not receive a referral response on this project.
Okay, thanks.
And I just don't have that at the tip of my tongue, and
Well,
I apologize.
No, not at all. Thank you for those answers. Any other questions right now for Mr. Yandel or Mr. Johnson? Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
So, through the chair, a couple questions. I did have a note about the water for washing the things. I heard you say no cleaning agents. So is that the reason for not needing a site drainage plan if it's just going to be water associated as what could be considered runoff?
Yeah, that's correct. It's a minimal water use, and it may not even need to happen. The project site drains naturally, and it's watered pretty heavily for the agricultural use, and this isn't going to be anything over baseline.
Okay, thank you. And then second question was just kind of a follow-up. The way I understand these projects that happen on could be considered ag land, so the no net losses, that's the reason for the project to have a lifetime expectancy, is that correct?
Well, the lifetime expectancy, as Cliff had mentioned, is probably based on how long the infrastructure can last. When you asked earlier about why they chose 35 years, I thought you were asking why they chose that exact amount of years, so I apologize for my response. But please repeat your question. I'm sorry.
The way I understand it, I could be totally wrong, I've been wrong lots of times in my life, is just to have a no net loss of ag lands. That's why there has to be a returning it to a natural state. Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, that's part of it, and also the way the project's designed, it's going to have ag use on it. The pollinator habitat will be beneficial to surrounding agricultural uses, and they will be raising honeybees, possibly growing some kind of other crop, and also having some grazing on the property. So as long as it stays in ag use, we believe that it's not an impact to the general plan's policies.
Okay, that's what I read. Thank you.
Okay, well, we do have one hand up in the public, but I'm wondering, is the applicant present tonight and wishing to make a presentation? No, okay.
They are on Zoom, and if you have questions for them.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't believe a presentation was put together by the applicant for this particular hearing.
Got it. Well, I see that the applicant's hand just went up on Zoom, so I will call on him first and then give him a chance to present as long or short as he wishes. So, Mr. Arian, go ahead. You are recognized.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure. I don't know how to activate my camera. Maybe it's not possible. I only see that I'm unmuted. Is there a chance that I also can be seen? Just in case that, I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I want to apologize for that.
Not at all. We can hear you fine, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present this project, and I'm very much appreciating those concerns about decommissioning and water usage. In fact, we had not prepared a presentation today. We were not told to. I'm happy to share screen if necessary and go through a couple of slides if you want me to do that. Please let me know, but I can also have some specifics about this project and also address both concerns. I'm the president and CEO of Renewable America. I have been the full-time involved in that development of that project from day one. We basically started assessing this land as a suitable project, and so I think I can definitely answer all those questions. So what do you prefer? Should we do a quick presentation of something that I have shown before to the county, or should we keep it simple and I'm just addressing both concerns about decommissioning and water usage?
I think you shouldn't feel the need to make a presentation if there wasn't anything that you felt needed to be added to the staff presentation. But I would appreciate you being willing to take any questions that the commission may have at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the way how we, let me first talk about the water usage. The way how we are basically looking at building those solar sites is in a, let's say, more modern way. I have built so far about 60 projects, started my career back in Germany, and what has been improved so far in the solar industry is that we try to do something that is going to be improved for the environment and not causing more difficulty for the environment. And we know how much water is a problem for, I think, especially California. Therefore, our intention is as much as is not needed, so if naturally rain, with the angle of the panels, we have this self-washing effect. So there is basically those panels, they're a single axis tracker, and they are tracking the sun, so they are sometimes at 50 degrees, and that helps a lot to wash down what is there. And what we mean with dry cleaning, there is a video that we have shown to the county. That video is basically a small robot that has the ability to drive over those panels at specific time in the year, maybe one time or maybe twice per year if needed, and just take off any kind of dust. It would not take any thick layer off, but we are not assuming, especially in Humboldt County, that this is an issue. So there is water accessible for us on site, but our intention is, and the way how we look at it in the next 35 years is hopefully we're not going to need any of the washing, and we can just do a dry cleaning method that is today pretty much successful in sites even in California. There's some references out. So I hope that that could make you feel more comfortable the way how we're looking at this. And we believe only in some special cases, if there was really a very drought season and a very dry year, maybe in a row, 2 years in a row, then maybe that might be necessary. We're still not thinking up in Humboldt County that would be necessary. About the commissioning, the way how we are looking at decommissioning is those 1,000 of piles that we're going to use. I don't have the exact number. I can look it up for you. But there are a couple of 1,000 of piles that we're going to drive into the ground. They're driven like nails into the ground, similar to you would drive nails into a wall. And we don't use any concrete. Therefore, that impact on the ground is basically very little. And the other benefit is when it comes to decommissioning, you can just with a standard excavator pull those piles out. So if concrete would have been used all over the land at each of the foundations, then we would have huge decommissioning costs, because concrete and recycling of concrete, that's one of the biggest challenges. But all the other materials that would have been used, I mean, all the solar panels, what is in this silicon, the solar cells, and glass, aluminum frames, all of those materials, they are fully recyclable. And recycling is happening after 35 years, even with about 80% of efficiency. So this is where this industry has been improved to as of today. So, and those steels that are out there, they have also still a value in 35 years. We're going to have to maintain this steel after 10 years. There are a couple of maintenance cycles, also the inverters and electrical parts like, transformers, switch gears. There's maintenance required. So the assumption is the decommissioning cost is covering basically the value that is left out in 35 years, the way how we plan to do the project. There will be some concrete, and that's the equipment pad where the transformer is installed or switchgear is installed, but that's such a small area that decommissioning cost is still covered by the value that is left out there. So this is the way how we look at it, and we can also provide some more background and maybe some details if necessary.
Okay, we have a question from a commissioner, or maybe a couple.
I guess my question was more is why are you decommissioning it after 35 years? We're still going to need energy, and that's the part I didn't understand. Why not continue on? I mean, you'd be constantly replacing the equipment when it fails or when it needs to be replaced, but why after 35 years do you say, okay, we're done, when people are still going to need energy?
Yeah, absolutely. A very good point. Thank you for bringing it up, because I absolutely with you. I would not want that happening, but it's a long time frame. So usually when you look at businesses, they look at 5 years. When you look at projects and facilities that are built out, it pretty much depends on what the technology can do. So today, 10 years ago, they have said lifetime of solar is not more than 20 years. These days, we do 35 years agreement with a landowner, and that is like a 20-year following 3 times 5 year. Is basically just an industrial standard where we are reaching today 35 years, but we already know that there are sites that are even 40 years. I think there are existing and they're still producing. And as you just mentioned, you can just replace those panels, because even if there's 80% production and you want to have the newest technology, everything is replaceable. So yes, I absolutely agree with you. The facility and that grid connection with PG&E will have a huge value at that point. And if community is relying on that renewable resource, that resource will continue in the future as well. So we don't have any vision that any of those projects are going to stop powering and supporting the communities in 35 years. It's just the way how the industry is looking at those type of projects and the way how we are just putting it in our descriptions, but it doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to decommission. Our intention would be that we're going to continue, maybe we purchase even the land at one point in this 35 years, or we just continue on this long-term lease. That's just the nature of the contract with the landowner, and also the technology itself, what its bankability and financeable as of today.
Thank you, Mr. Ari. And we have one more question from a commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious, this has come up in other projects, but will the new solar array be connected to the PG&E grid through undergrounded lines or above ground lines? It's become a serious point of contention on many energy projects because of the high risk of fire danger. As you know, we're in the middle of a climate emergency and California gets drier and drier typically.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So we are lucky a little bit here on this specific project because the way how the infrastructure is built, today's distribution line, it's right next to that property on the same street side. So we don't need to cross it. We can just tap into this existing feeder line with, I think, an additional pole that needs to be installed there. And that's pretty much it. There is already overhead line even on the property going through the way how PG&E has connected just in the middle of that property. I think it's for some kind of pump usage of the well that is out there. So we would just kind of install another overhead line and continue doing that. But your concern about any fire danger because of trees that might be close to this new power overhead line, we have addressed that. We're going to clear those trees in a way that they would not close at all. And we would not increase any of the risks that is there. And we would even address it if there is any risk area. So I think it's definitely our approach to make sure that there is, for our multi-million-dollar investment, no risk of a fire, because of course, and first, the community safety is important, but you can imagine for our investment, this is a very important part too, for insurance and everything else. So the way how overhead line is just necessary, it just is much more costly if you go underground. But since we are not doing it anywhere that would be outside of the project premises, it's all on the project premises, we feel that it's comfortable and should not be any concern for anyone.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions right now for the applicant? We can always call him back later if we. Okay, one more follow-up from Commissioner Mitchell.
Does your company have any experience with other projects on providing surety bonds for the decommissioning part? I didn't hear you answer that question that was raised. So I don't know if I missed it or if you could clarify on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So I have explained a little bit about decommissioning, but maybe you're right. It wasn't a request from Humboldt County because the way how we were able to explain our project, that wasn't necessary. We have so far not been necessary on any of our projects in California to provide a decommissioning bond. We think that was something in the early days of solar. So I have seen this in other parts of the US. I was earlier involved in East Coast and in Northampton County, and basically they are located in North Carolina. They had a concern and they put a minimum amount. Even we could show with an independent engineer that there is no decommissioning value or concern necessary because it basically the cost is covering the residual value that is there. But still, they wanted a $50,000 check. So yeah, I can disclose that just to be very fully transparent. But this is back in 2017 or 2016 actually that time. So it's about 6 years ago. And I think we are very much appreciating because those kind of costs, they can impact our investment if it stays there for such a long time, of 35 years or so, a bond cost. So we are happy that the county understood how we are looking at that and how we do it differently with that less impervious area and less usage of concrete. So that is basically the way how we would like to be approved with our use permit without a requirement of the Commission on Security. If that's something that everyone is concerned about, and that would be a decision of the meeting today, then we would need to address that, obviously.
Thank you. And I just would have one more quick question for you concerning the agricultural co-use. I appreciate that this project has been designed to include agricultural uses. The staff report that we received said that it will include pollinator habitat. That seems to be certain. The other agricultural uses in the staff report were sort of made like contingent, or, it was said that there may be grazing done as well. There may be honeybees raised and potentially other crops. So I just wanted to ask you if you know at this time, if you think it is your intention to include grazing on these parcels as, along with the energy project.
Yeah, our intention is definitely to combine the usage, and the way how we look at pollinator friendly habitat creation is we even think if ever farming is necessary on this parcel after the 35 years, assuming that there is no more need for renewable at that location, then we even think through the pollinator friendly activities, we are improving that land and that ground in a way that it can even produce more and better farming. So basically all the activities so far shows that if you can combine solar pollinator friendly activity and maybe beehives, that's something that we are very much thinking of doing. In terms of grazing, sheep grazing is possible, and this is now done by many of other solar projects all over California. So it's wouldn't be an innovation here, and it's something that can be done. We would need to explore that more in detail. If sheep grazing is something we can do at this particular location, it's definitely part of our activities that we want to explore further. And then there is a list of animals that would not work. So if like cows or like goats are definitely a no-go for solar panels, they can destroy them and they can date themselves, and then that wouldn't be a good idea. So sheep is definitely a good idea and sometimes suitable.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we've taken, I think, all the time we need for questions for you. Thank you for your willingness to answer. And I do have one more hand up in the public. So I will go now to Public 7454. It's your 3 minutes. Mr. Sawatsky.
Thank you. I Googled this particular company, and of course, it's kind of an interesting thing. In speaking with John Ford, and John did take some time to answer many questions on many of these projects today. That's always greatly appreciated by all of us, so I'm not pulling a bunch of things off consent. I think I have the right website here. It looks like they have 4 projects in Humboldt County under preliminary development and or off-taker confirmed. The explanation given by the applicant was nice regarding, potentially having enough money for salvage to remediate the project afterwards. But we're dealing with an LLC, and I don't want to say LLCs are bad, but I think the surety bond is something that should be required under these circumstances. I also feel, one of the biggest things that's being brought to this is to continue using this prime ag soil, for grazing, and strongly applaud the honeybees. But I'd like to see a commitment here and an acceptable plan drawn up. Are you going to have 50 hives on there and run an average of 30 sheep? And is that a commitment? This is a rural area. I mean, we pride ourselves in taking care of this prime ag soil, and we really don't want to see it converted into commercial use. And so your proposal, in my opinion, should have more specificity. I hope you would be willing to do that. I also have a concern. I guess this is one of the first projects where we're actually going to have battery storage. Is that my understanding on this one? So we're going to be having Tesla batteries on there. How those are to be contained. This is within a floodplain. And the things that are in batteries, the lithium and things in batteries, if you are proposing those, are something many of us consider to be toxics. Those should be secured in a manner where if we have a 100-year flood, there's no danger of that ending up in our bay and estuaries. Also, there should be something in the plan. The technique without concrete sounds interesting, but I wonder if the uplift has been studied as far as if you do have a 100-year flood coming through here, what the potential water heights might be, and if studies have been doing that. Because again, we don't want to see what I consider toxics involved. Maybe they aren't involved at all, but these solar panels do take recycling and things. We don't want that in our bay. So I don't know if those things have all been studied to the full extent you can, but for those of us who are kind of worried about our environment here, I think a plan, for this, a surety bond for removal, and to make sure that we don't have any potential contaminants from the panels or from the Tesla batteries or whatever you're using there. So thank you for the opportunity to make these comments. Maybe the applicant would be willing to address a few of those concerns and possibly be willing to make a commitment, to following through with some of those suggestions or other ones that would accomplish the goals. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. And we have another hand up on Zoom, Martha Walden. It's your 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Martha Walden. I'm a member of 350 Humboldt, and I'd like to read a condensed version of our comment that I emailed too late for your agenda packets. In light of the urgent need for locally produced clean renewable energy, 350 Humboldt would welcome the Foster Clean Power Project at the intersection of Foster and James Road on the outskirts of Arcata. We believe the benefits of 7 megawatts of electricity produced by solar panels outweigh the environmental impacts of the 30-acre installation. Plus, the planned battery storage enhances that benefit. As the developers have promised, installing solar panels on that site should require minimal ground disturbance or vegetation removal. They've also promised to minimize night lighting. Because existing access is almost adequate, only a short stretch of new road would be necessary. The project's proximity to the grid also makes the site a good location for electricity production. 350 Humboldt recognizes the need to be cautious about converting agricultural land to industrial development. We hope ongoing agricultural activity will share land with the panels. The pollinator habitat program mentioned in the mitigated negative declaration is the bare minimum of what is possible. Livestock grazing and even growing some row crops in between the panels have been successfully demonstrated in other areas. As we head into an increasingly precarious future, the commitment to techniques that blend energy and food production will define wise land use. We encourage the developers and landowners to maximize those opportunities. In 35 years, the land may revert to exclusive agricultural use. 350 Humboldt is an organization that advocates for clean energy and the reduction of greenhouse gases in order to curb as much as possible the ongoing and foreseen harms of climate change. We endorse going forward with the process for Foster Clean Power Project as a means to that end. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public, either in the room or on Zoom or on the phone, that would like to comment on this project? Okay, well, seeing none, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further discussion or questions.
Could we ask staff to clarify the flood level on this site, please? I saw some information in the packet, but it's difficult to follow.
Yes, I'll gladly do that. And it's also in the packet as Appendix D, but I will read what it says in the staff report. It says, according to the According to Humboldt GIS, the project is located within the 100-year floodplain of the Mad River. However, according to an October 30th, 1997 letter of map amendment from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The site is not located in a special flood hazard area that is in an area that would be inundated by a flood having a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year. So it's not located in a flood hazard area.
Yeah, by the amended map.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
As a follow-up, is that outside of the tsunami inundation zone as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question. You mentioned that this was sent out, this was noticed to 215 addresses, I believe you said, and that's concerning not just this hearing, but also the CEQA document.
And the neighborhood outreach meeting.
And the neighborhood outreach
That's
meeting,
correct, yes.
which had 5 attendees. We do have one public comment letter, in anticipation of this hearing that was received. There was one person who said they sent in something late, but too late for our packets. That was the woman who just spoke. I just want to make sure we weren't missing any other comment letters associated with the CEQA, with the with the mitigated negative deck.
No, there was no comments submitted for the CEQA circulation from any agency of the state or any of the 210 residences that received it. We did receive one comment for this noticing for this hearing from a Mrs. Proctor that I believe lives over in the neighborhood to the east. And then we did receive the comment from the last speaker, but it was a little late to get it into the packet. But we
Sure.
knew that Tripp had forwarded it to you, or the planning clerk, sorry.
I don't know that I got it, but it was too late. Yeah. No, that's the rules. I mean, but she came in. She was able to make her comments in the hearing, and so that's what counts. And she, anyway, the only 2 comments that we've received then are very much in favor of the project. Is my understanding.
That's correct.
We did receive the support letter from Ms. Proctor.
Yes. Yep. Well, what are your thoughts? Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to lead off the discussion by saying that climate change is a very serious and real thing, and even for folks that don't believe in it, we only have 22 years to completely wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, and all electricity sold in California has to be renewable by 2045. And so I strongly support this project. The only thing that I would ask for, based on the public testimony and just how long of a time frame we're talking about, would either be a performance bond or a parent company guarantee, so that we don't get stuck if the project were to fail financially or something were to change, so that the county isn't left holding the bag, that the company stands behind its project and will take the funds out of some other pocket if this project were to fail. That's all I'm concerned about, and I'm happy to make a motion to approve it with that additional requirement based on how the other commissioners feel.
I see Commissioner O'Neill's hand is up.
You could ask for a letter of credit where they put money on deposit in the bank and it stays there for the duration of the projects, or they could get a bond, a surety bond, or put up their own money, like I said, in a letter of credit. If it's an amount, it could grow in interest over the 35 years even. I know that was an issue when we were looking at the wind up on.
Can you orient the microphone so that it's directional?
So it was, the Bear River project, that was a concern that I had, because they could walk away and leave all that concrete and what have you. This is not such an impact, but it could still cost money. But it sounds like they're leasing the property from someone else, and the property owner would be the one that might get stuck holding the bag if all of this stuff is on their property and the lease ends and they're gone. It's right by my mouth, so I'm trying.
So basically the way the mic works is that it's directional. So when you turn away from it, if it's over here and you're talking
Okay.
here, it doesn't pick you up. It has to be in the direction that you're talking.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Well, I might ask, I'm sort of curious on this point, to ask the director if he has any thoughts on the question of why this project wasn't conditioned to require a surety or performance bond. That might inform our thinking on this, since it is obviously something that can be done and has been done for some projects, at least in other counties and perhaps projects here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that in response to that, what I'd simply say is that this is not a huge project that is going to completely reconfigure the earth and would require a significant amount of restoration. As the applicant mentioned, it has about 2,000 posts that are put into the ground. There's the removal of the material. Obviously, the county does not want to be in a position of having to reclaim the site itself. And so from a policy perspective, it certainly is within the commission's discretion to require that a security bond or surety bond be placed for the removal of all of the infrastructure installed on the site. The question is, does this project rise to the level that that would be appropriate? And then the other consideration is that ultimately the property owner would be responsible. And I have a tendency to think, I have not seen the contract, but my experience in the past is that the property owner is usually more concerned about having the property restored than anybody else is, because they don't want to get left either with a mess to clean up or be left with a code enforcement action placed upon them. I would say that it would be appropriate at least to have an agreement with the parent company of the LLC, indicating that they are going to clean it up, and then it's really a policy decision whether or not you want to require a bond.
Okay, thank you, Director.
I mean, really, there's 3 or 4 ways that this could be accomplished. That we could have a, holding company guarantee. We could have a surety bond. There could be cash in an escrow account. So can we just put a condition that somehow they must provide further surety beyond that of an LLC to enforce or ensure that the remediation is done in 35 years, no matter how well or poorly the project does, and no matter who ends up owning it, or if this company gets acquired by a larger company, that this project, the financial end of it is tied to the future financial obligation somehow. And the director could be the one who signs off on whichever way is the most logical and least costly for the applicant.
So, and would an agreement with, a legal agreement enforceable with the parent company, would that satisfy this, or would it actually need to be money put up in an account, in your thinking?
It could be a performance guarantee by the parent company, or no money is needed to sit there, and they can deploy their capital doing other projects. They could put the money in the bank and have it be an escrow to only be used on decommissioning, or you could pay not the full amount, but an amount to someone who does performance bonds, that amount that the surety bond issuer will pick up the cost should this company fail to do so.
Okay. Well,
You could also put a lien against the property for that costs too, couldn't you?
We don't know how much the cost will be, and they wouldn't want to leave until they default.
Okay.
Okay, yep. I mean, my concern would simply be I don't want to burden this project with so much that we get in the way of it happening. But I don't think what you're suggesting and the range of options that you're proposing would do that.
Yeah, I like the addition of the least costly for the applicant while, you know, yeah, maintaining that surety.
Okay, Commissioner Mulder.
Two things. Before we go down too far in this discussion, I understand the concerns. I heard the public comment, and I also hear the concerns of the commission. Two things. One, I would want to make sure that we had good guidance as far as language from the director on if we were going to do a condition, how we would do that, or other staff. And secondly, I believe when we do look at adding conditions of approval, we bring the applicants on to discuss that with them. So before we went too far down this rabbit hole, I'd like to do that.
No, I actually was going to invite the applicant to speak to this point, and before I did, he put his hand up. So I just want to mention there's a couple other hands up in the public. We're no longer taking general public comments, but Mr. Arian, as the applicant, we would invite your response to this discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I wanna address that concern. So one thing that I believe wasn't very clear about our project, and I want to add that, as you already know, there are two phases, and our phase A that is farther progressed and will start construction this year. We have this one already selling the electricity for 20 years to Redwood Coast Energy Authority, which I guess everyone is familiar with them. And under that agreement, we provided a performance bond, basically of an amount of $292,500, which can definitely also be seen as something that can secure not only on the performance as well as decommissioning. That selling of the electricity is for this moment only for the phase A. We're going to continue with the negotiation with Redwood Coast Energy for the second phase. They already showed interest, and we would love to provide that electricity to them as well. And what I'm trying to explain, I just hit it, and I thought it's maybe very important that we bring this up. This is not a small amount for our small project, and I very much appreciate Mr. John Ford bringing this up. That's a small project. A bigger amount as a standby letter of credit or bonding, that can cause financial impacts and on the returns. We haven't been informed about it so far. It was not a condition until today. So I can't tell you what we can or we cannot. I can just tell you this project is pretty tight and its returns. And we just basically trying to do a demonstration here with this project, especially with the battery storage. And it will be very unique for Humboldt County and Redwood Coast Energy. So we're hoping you can help us in that way. And maybe I would need to discuss this internally if a parent guarantee is something that would cause less impacts financially to us. Love to do that. So can't really tell you something today, but I can say for sure cost for standby letter of credits or cost for bonding are impacting the this project.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for that comment. Commissioner Mitchell.
So I was the one that suggested the menu approach of giving you any number of ways, including a parent company guarantee, the only cost of which would be the internal cost of your general counsel to review it. But would that be something that you would accept if we gave you a range of alternatives that would be acceptable to the commission that I've listed several times now? So I know you go ahead.
I believe I want to discuss it internally. I can imagine yes, but I also think the amount is necessary. So because I don't think we need to make sure, like the example that I was giving before about Northampton County back in 2016, this $50,000. So there must be some sort of calculation, because if we are saying that there are independent engineers who can prove that the value in 35 years is covering the cost of decommissioning, so what are we guaranteeing them? What are we bonding them in? But that's where I'm a little bit confused, to be honest. Like if you still say no, like I want $50,000, then I can discuss it with our investment committee and say, are you comfortable with providing principal guarantee $50,000? We need to have a method of what amount we want to put in there, even if it's clear that the value is basically covering the cost of the commission. And actually, one of the hands that was raised was by our attorney, Brad.
Oh.
He had a...
Okay, I did not realize that the Brad Johnson was with the applicant, but in light of our asking you this question, I would recognize Brad Johnson's comment. Go ahead, we'll unmute, or you can unmute yourself.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. So one thing I just wanted to reiterate is that this bonding requirement is not, like Mr. Aryan said, is not part of the county ordinances that would be applicable to the use permit for this project. So it was not something that was built into the project from the get-go. I think we certainly understand the commission's concerns at the end of the project life, 35 years from now. We want to see that the project facilities, which again are steel posts just placed directly into the ground, are removed. But like Director Ford said, this is a very low impact project, and so the extent of, I won't even call it remediation, but removal of the project facilities is relatively minor. But I think what I might suggest is if the commission does feel the need to have some additional security beyond the salvage value of those facilities at the end of the life, which they will have, one thing you might consider is an agreement with the project applicant and the landowner, whereby the parties agree that at the end of the project life, if the project is not decommissioned on such a schedule, that the county can, without contest, place a lien on the property for the value of the decommissioning work that needs to be performed. That's something that the county can hold on to, and 3.5 decades down the road, if the project is not decommissioned, then that lien can be placed and the monies can be secured that way. That approach would prevent the need for Mr. Aryan and his company to set aside and silo funds for that period of time when those funds could be used for the project and for the development of other clean energy renewable projects elsewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That was helpful. I see the director's hand is up, so I'd like to give Director Ford a chance to comment here as well.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to kind of maybe focus back to what I think Commissioner Mitchell was trying to accomplish, which is not necessarily to get a surety bond, but to provide the applicant with a range of alternatives. And one of those could be just an agreement with the parent company, and that would allow basically a civil action to take place if necessary, if the cleanup doesn't occur. I think the surety bond is something that the commission should consider, that there is a cost associated with that. And so there is a carrying cost associated with that too, that adds to the cost of the project. With respect to placing a lien on the property, that certainly is something that we could do whether there's an agreement in place or not. to clean up the property. The struggle with that is that we would need to the county would need to front the cost of doing the cleanup first. And then if the property owner didn't reimburse for that, then we would place a tax lien on the property, and that would be paid as normal property taxes are. So that certainly would not require a carrying cost. It would be some accountability there. Perhaps having that agreement between the property owner and the applicant, just as a way to put everybody on notice of what could happen if the property is not cleaned up, would be valuable. But I didn't hear the commission saying that it was a surety bond or nothing. And it was really a matter of something being in place that would allow or ensure the property or the applicant would be accountable for cleaning the property up.
Thank you, Director Ford. I think that's correct. That's what I understand as well. But I'll if you're done, sir, then I'll let Commissioner Mitchell, who had his hand up again, speak.
Thank you. I'm confused by what several of the folks on the project are saying. They're saying this is going to be so small and be so easy that you don't need to require a surety bond. But you're also saying it's going to be so expensive for us to get one. So that logic just doesn't seem rational. And I would be open to any number of, like I said before, a menu of options that you could look at. And as long as Director Ford agrees that it covers the county from bearing that initial cost, then you get the green light. And I've mentioned several ways that I could conceive of doing that. You might think of another one, and as long as our staff agrees, then you don't have to come back to us. We'd be approving it tonight, subject to making sure that should your company be acquired, should your company merge with another, should this project be sold, that what you're telling us is going to happen in 35 years. There's a long history of companies coming into this county and proposing to do big things, and they leave destruction and their toll for the public to clean up, be that the timber industry or the pot industry or the lumber mills. So I just want to make sure that we're not leaving to our children and grandchildren any burdens. So.
Okay, thanks. And I would like to wrap this up, but I want to give Mr. Johnson one last chance to respond to, this is the lawyer for the company. So go ahead, Mr. Johnson, briefly, please.
Yes, I'll be very brief, and thank you very much. So just to address Commissioner Mitchell's comments, and I certainly understand where he's coming from, but one thing I want to make clear is this is not a lumber mill. This is not a timber harvest. This is not a polluting project. We're talking about clean, renewable solar power. It involves only the placement of steel posts directly into the ground that can be removed directly with zero residual impacts to the agricultural property itself. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's clear regarding exactly what impacts the project entails. And then secondly, regarding the kind of seeming contradiction between the need for bonding and the small size of the project, it is a small project, which means that the margins are extremely tight on this project. And so the siloing of even $50,000, and I have no idea if that's the right amount or not, but let's say it's $50,000 that gets siloed for a period of 35 years with the time value of money. That's a huge dollar value that would have to be absorbed by this project. And this project isn't large enough to absorb that dollar value. So that's the point, and that's what resolves that inconsistency. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Commissioner Mulder, you have your hand up.
A couple of things. One, the first one is, I believe, for the applicant. I had in their presentation, the follow-up, I do believe in my notes, they said they have a performance bond in Phase A that's good for 20 years for $290,000, and I just wanted to ask if that's possible through the chair for them to clarify that amount and that bond that's already in place or will be in place.
Sure, Mr. Arian, you're being asked if you could confirm that what you said about the performance bond that's being put up in your contract with RCEA, I believe, or?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have paid that amount, and that can be replaced by a standby letter of credit. I don't think that they even allow for this performance security, a surety bond, which is always better than cash or standby letter of credit. But Redwood Coast Energy has confirmed the last final payment. We kind of split it in two parts, and that was received by them as well. So that amount is already paid, and that's just covers for half of this project, remembering phase one of that. So we would still need for the second phase to pay another development. Basically, we call it development security under our power purchase agreement, but it goes automatically into a performance security after it becomes operational and stays with them for the lifetime of the project. I mean, for the term of the power purchase agreement, with the assumption that power going to be continued for the lifetime. So the PPA does not talk about what happens after 20 years, since that's already a big number for Humboldt County, for Redwood Coast Energy to purchase the electricity. But I mean, that is in place and will stay in place as long as they purchase the electricity from us.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I do understand it's not a surety bond, but I just want to note that. And then the next one is for staff. Through the chair to staff, what I heard in the presentation of this, currently in the zoning ordinance we have within our county does not require surety or surety bonds. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, we don't really have any code that directly addresses these kind of solar projects.
Okay.
And then we are actually considering working on something in the future regarding that.
Okay. So I personally, I might be on the minority on this, but I'm kind of like, hey, if we have rules in place, let's stick with rules. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard an absorbent amount of public testimony to lean me towards adding an extra condition. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm more in the realm of like, let's move the project forward as it shows, because we haven't had the public testimony to justify, in my opinion, the added conditions of approval. But I'm totally fine in being in the minority on that.
Director Ford, yes, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to say that what Mr. Yandel said is absolutely correct. There is not a requirement for a surety bond. But I'm not advocating for a surety bond here necessarily, but I just want to remind the commission that this is a project that is discretionary. You are required to make the finding that the public health, safety, and welfare has been protected. And so you can add reasonable conditions in order to achieve that required objective. And so I don't want to have you be misinformed that because our ordinance does not address solar installations and does not have performance criteria for solar installations, that your hands are at all tied in addressing what would need to be done to protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
Thank you. Commissioner McCaver and then Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. I guess this is a question for the director. Could we not just rely on the relationship between the landowner who's leasing the land and the applicant in terms of resolving any sort of dispute or lack of decommissioning?
Yes, you can. As I mentioned earlier, this is really a bit of a policy factor here that once we do get an ordinance for renewable energy facilities that we'll want to address, what's the difference between a small grid system and something that's very, very large that we would want to see a decommissioning bond in place. For very large facilities, it's not uncommon. For something that's very small, the comment that you heard tonight from the applicant that their margins are tight, that's something that this applicant is not alone in making that point.
Thank you. And that, I think that, well, I feel comfortable given the few, at least very few impacts, foreseeable impacts associated with this project, and the vested interest of the landowner leasing this land. I feel comfortable just leaving that between them in, for this particular project. Small size, low impact.
Sure. Commissioner O'Neill.
I would like to go with the recommendation that Mr. Ford came up with earlier. I can't repeat it word for word, but if there's an agreement in place so that everybody fully understands who's responsible or who it's going to default to if somebody walks out, I don't know if it's the Redwood Energy, the landowner, the investor, who it is, but come up with a boilerplate legal agreement so that everybody's clear who's going to be responsible for the cleanup. We don't even know if $50,000 would clean it up in 35 years. So they might have a bond and say, well, take my bond because it's going to cost me $90,000. So I don't know that we could pick a number and know that that would be the correct number in 35 years. So I think an agreement in the way that the county's handling now, where it goes on to your tax default and then, there's a lien against your property basically, and it'll get auctioned off if you don't pay it. But I would leave it up to the Mr. Ford to come up with what that written agreement is and just trust, because this is one of the first ones we've had to deal with. It might be applicable to all of them in the future. But to just pick a number, I don't know that we would be picking the right number in terms of what 35 years from now will cost.
Well, from what I understood from what the director was saying is that the county could put a lien on the property if this were to default anyway. And so I don't really see that it's necessary to even put anything on there from the commission.
Yep. Commissioner Scavdall.
I like this project and has a lot of merits. And I think we're overemphasizing the decommissioning aspect. It's not that big a project, and I think decommissioning this project is something that would take a matter of weeks, not months, with a piece of equipment to sort the materials into bins. And the recovery value of the materials is certainly going to offset some of the decommissioning costs, if not all. The project sits on prime ag land that's worth a lot of money. It's going to be worth a lot more money in 35 years, and it's still going to be prime ag land. So I don't think it's going to sit there as an abandoned solar field for very long. I'm comfortable with the decommissioning plan that's coming in as a part of the project, and county using its existing methods to abate a site that's been abandoned if that is what happens in the future, but I think that's really unlikely.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
A couple more things I wanted to add is in support of the project as is, and we think about impacts. There's I think 2 trees, maybe a little bit more than 2 trees being removed. It's on flat land. It's right next to a Category 4 road. It's not a mountainside out in the the mountaintop out in the middle of nowhere. Being flattened or regraded and worrying about possible or potential erosion. So for me personally, thinking about the health, safety, and welfare of the public, I feel that this project already mitigates a lot of those concerns, and it's not a high, as the fellow commissioner stated, it's not a high likelihood that this would be an abandoned site that would be left, 40 miles out of dirt road, just unattended. So I'm good with it the way it is.
So make a motion.
Okay, make a motion to adopt the resolution, which says the following: adopt a mitigated negative declaration prepared for Renewable America LLC project pursuant to section 15074 state CEQA guidelines, and make all the required findings for approval of the conditional use permit, and approve the Renewable America LLC conditional use permit as recommended by staff and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any last comment before we vote? Yes, Commissioner Mitchell.
I would like to offer an amending motion that would offer a menu of options whereby the applicant would provide surety that the decommissioning is either funded already, or that another entity with money, such as their parent company, provides a guarantee, or any of the other things that we've mentioned, and to be approved ultimately by the applicant and Director Ford.
Okay, I believe our procedure is that when there's an amendment offered on a motion, we vote on the amendment before we vote on the motion. Is that?
Chair?
Oh, yeah.
Chair, you need to get a second on
Yes.
that before you have to vote.
Thank you for.
If there's no second, you don't have to vote.
Right. Is there a second on that amending motion? I'll second the motion, the amendment, just for the sake of a vote. Okay. To be clear, you're suggesting that what we put into this condition is a range of options to be put to the director if we approve this, which would not necessarily entail a cash outlay bond, but simply could include the least costly, I believe you said, or it could include a performance agreement between the county, the landowner, and the applicant. That could be one of the options?
Out of anything on the menu that's been discussed multiple times, whichever one the applicant thinks is the easiest, most cost-effective, cheapest, the one that they like, as long as Director Ford is willing to sign off that it meets the concerns that have been brought up by certain members of the public and me.
Okay. Then we have a motion or an amendment and a second. Let's have a vote on that amendment. Mr. Tripp?
Thomas Mulder,
No.
Ivor Skobdal,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Okay, the motion for the amendment passes, or the amendment passes. The amendment to the motion, which was already made. So we now have the original motion with that additional condition attached to vote on. We ready for a vote on that?
Of course we are.
Okay, thank you.
We already voted on the amendment. Now we're voting on the original.
Yeah, this is
The
sort of
amended motion.
an unusual procedure, but just to be clear, we were voting on adding an amended condition to the original motion, and the original motion was simply to approve this project as
Excellent.
recommended with the other conditions that were already attached.
Excellent. So let's do a roll call vote then. Ivor Skobdal,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. This project is approved with one additional condition. Well, to be determined. Well, I think it was discussed enough that the Director, are you sufficiently clear on what was added as that additional condition?
So I think what I'm going to do is when we write this up is to say that we're going to specifically list out that it could be an agreement between the parent company and the county. It could be an agreement between the applicant and the property owner, understanding that the property will need to be cleaned up, and if not, the property owner would be responsible. It could be a surety bond, or it could be another mechanism that accomplishes the same purpose, subject to approval of the Director of Planning and Building.
Yes, and Commissioner Mitchell.
And if I could just clarify, the policy goal is that no matter how well or poorly the project performs, no matter who ultimately ends up owning the project in 35 years, that the decommissioning that is being committed to by this applicant be done by whoever owns it in 35 years. So any number of ways that can be accomplished, as long as that policy objective is met by the proposal, we trust you to implement that.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Mitchell. I do just want to clarify, regardless of who owns it, without this condition, or this new condition, that is already a condition of the permit. The applicant has proposed a decommissioning plan, and that plan is a component of the project, and they get to do that.
We're ensuring that funds will be available, or it's clear that the property owner inherently accepts that risk or has it covered in their lease.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, let's move on then. We do have more items probably than we're going to be able to get to, but let's see if we can move through as many of them as possible. We're now coming to, that's the end of public hearings. We're now coming to Section G, items pulled from consent. Going back to the consent calendar, the first of the 4 items that were pulled from consent was number 3, Willow Creek Ventures LLC in the Willow Creek area. As I said, our procedure is to have a staff report, so I'm hoping we can still move through this quickly, but do we have a planner available to give a staff report on this?
I'm available on Zoom.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Ms. Acevedo, go ahead.
Okay, let me share my screen. And let's see, are you seeing the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Megan Acevedo, and I am the assigned planner for Willow Creek Ventures. Willow Creek Ventures is applying for a conditional use permit and a special permit located in the Willow Creek area. Here is an aerial image of the location for Willow Creek Ventures and its proximity to Willow Creek. The project is located southeast of Willow Creek and is accessed by U.S. Forest Service Route 6N06 from the county-maintained portion of Friday Ridge Road. The site will mainly be owner-operated, and up to 4 employees will be used during peak season for up to 2 weeks out of the year. As the site is for pre-existing activities, no increase in traffic is anticipated as part of the project. The applicant is applying for a conditional use permit for 20,000 square feet of pre-existing outdoor cannabis cultivation with 1,902 square feet of ancillary propagation. Water will be sourced from a permitted well. Estimated annual water use is 337,364 gallons, which is 15.4 gallons per square foot per year. There is a total of 12,500 gallons of existing water storage on site, and an additional 7,500 gallons are proposed for a total of 20,000 gallons of water storage. Drying and curing will occur on site, and trimming will occur off site at a licensed processing facility. Power will be sourced from an existing 2,500 watt solar array, and the applicant will have 1 emergency only backup generator. The site is zoned Timberland Production Zone and no new construction is proposed. A well assessment report was prepared for the well by licensed geologist David Lindberg, which determined that the well has a low likelihood of being hydrologically connected to nearby surface waters, and states that the well appears to be a confined subsurface aquifer with an expected recharge rate of 19.5 million gallons of water per year. Here is a cross-section showing the depth and location of the well in reference to nearby surface waters. The cross-section shows that the well is located more than 1,000 feet to any nearby surface waters, and the depth of the well is approximately 600 feet higher in elevation than the closest unnamed ephemeral stream, located 1,450 feet from the well. This demonstrates that the well has a low likelihood of being hydrologically connected to surface waters in a manner that could affect adjacent springs, wetlands, or surface waters in the vicinity. The project includes the request for a special permit for setback reduction to public lands, the Six Rivers National Forest, which is approximately 100 feet to the nearest cultivation area. The project was referred to the Six Rivers National Forest and comments were received with a general letter recommending denial of the project due to the use of U.S. Forest Service roads, and a request was made for a parcel survey to ensure that operations are not trespassing upon federal lands. There is a record of survey on file, which shows that there is a survey marker located at the southeast corner of the property where the closest cultivation area is proposed. The applicant has verified the location of the survey marker and measured that it is approximately 110 feet to the nearest proposed cultivation area. The project is consistent with recreational uses on public lands, as the proposed project is not located near developed campgrounds, trails, or other related facilities. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for Ms. Acevedo?
Yes, I had a question. And thanks for the staff report, although I don't know, in the interest of time, if that's totally necessary to reiterate a staff report that I already read. But in the staff report, we state that the applicant's going to have 5,000 gallons of water storage for fire protection. And in the conditions of approval, we say 2,500 gallons of water storage for fire protection. So we're inconsistent. And I just wanted to make sure we are consistent there and understand if the condition needs to be restated to be 5,000 gallons.
I think I can answer that question. I think the requirement is 2,500 gallons of water storage for fire suppression, but the applicant is planning to designate 5,000 gallons. So that was a notational error on my part.
So the applicant's plan, operations plan said they're going to have 5,000 gallons. The staff report said 5,000 gallons. So again, should the condition be that the applicant have 5,000 gallons of fire storage?
Yes, the condition should be modified to be 5,000 gallons of fire storage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scavdell. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Commissioner Mulder.
I'll be brief, and I think I know the answer to this question, but just to make sure it's on the record, being as it was polled, this is for staff. The way I understand and read this is there was a lot of grading done and a flat created that had buried stumps and other woody debris. And the way I understand this condition of approval is they would have to get an engineer to sign off on that grading and also remove that woody debris. Am I reading this correctly?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will open this up for public comment. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment? Feel free not to, so that we can, oh, darn. Well, public comment is always a component of these. So yes, we do have one hand up. Public 7454, go ahead. Yes, Mr. Sawatsky.
Chairperson, it would be very disrespectful of me to pull an item and not make comment, so I shall make comment. I wish you to ask staff how the water is computed for this particular project, and it appears to be quite a heck of a lot more water than the preceding project. The preceding project sounds like just close to apples and apples, 40,000 plus a little bit of existing outgrow growth. And that one has estimated water use of 74,263 gallons, whereas we have what is half the size of Grow, just about exactly, with an estimated water usage of 330,364 gallons. I don't see how the Dinsmore area and the Willow Creek area are that dissimilar in water usage. And of course, water usage is a concern, especially when all we have is a proposed storage on this particular site of 20,000 gallons. I do appreciate there with a 2,500 watt solar array and a backup generator, but I really question the logic of why this is using so much more disproportionate amount of water, and that's always a concern for those who less appreciate the environment. I also wish to thank staff for mentioning that this is on the Six River Forest has asked for denial. We seem to continually go over the top of them, and they're supposed to be the caretakers of our environment. So I really have a problem and continue to have a problem with something being within 100 foot of something that has a 6 foot, 100 foot of protection built into it, and with the recommendation of denial by the Six Rivers National Forest, the Planning Commission continually going over the top of the recommendation. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment on this item, or the applicant themselves if they wish to comment? You don't need to. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Mitchell.
I just wanted to ask the referral to Public Works has a checklist about roads. That's where the whole, is it category 4 equivalent comes into play. But in this one, there's a question that says, does the project take access from a series of non-county maintained roads that connect directly to a Caltrans state highway, U.S. Forest Service road, BLM road, or a city road? And if yes, the department recommends that prior to the project being presented to the Planning Commission, that the project should be referred to the affected agencies. And in this case, it seems like the agency recommended denial. So I guess my question is, why is this part of the checklist if we refer it out and they say no, and then we still go forward with it?
Sure. Through the chair, as you see in the checklist, it's not just for the Forest Service roads, Caltrans, and other agencies. And so this checklist, I believe, was developed when we really first started reviewing these cannabis applications. And I believe before we received what is basically a generic comment letter from the Forest Service stating that they would not support cannabis projects that utilize federal roads due to the legal status under federal law of cannabis. And so I don't think that's been changed. And this project, as you noted, was referred to the Forest Service.
I have a question.
Commissioner O'Neill.
So in past projects that were totally reliant on wells, we have encouraged water catchment and less reliance on wells, but in this one, we're not. So is that just something we arbitrarily do sometimes, but we don't do all the time?
I don't think it's arbitrary. I think it has to do with what evidence we have about the productivity of the well and its, non-connectivity to other sources. I think that's my understanding, is that that's all taken into account in terms of whether we think it's essentially okay to rely entirely on the well versus to require them to supplement the well.
Because I know this has come up that people went to wells because they were encouraged to go to wells by the state, but we've still said we would encourage you to do catchment. But
Commissioner McCaver.
Yeah, on the water usage aspect, thank you for the public comment, Mr. Swatsky. So the number of gallons per square foot is high relative to other projects, but if you look at, I think it's attachment 1B, they're doing 2 rounds of light deprivation as well as full-term outdoor, and so I think it's because they're doing more growing rather than using a questionable amount of water for one cycle.
Right, multiple cycles. Good. Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Mulder, and then, well, I see Director Ford's hand is up. Let me just get the director in first.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to respond to Commissioner O'Neill, and this is a conversation that seems to happen at times relative to requiring rainwater catchment. There were 2 projects. Both those projects occurred on the same Planning Commission meeting that the commission added a requirement to install rainwater catchment for 50% of the water use. Those projects were appealed to the Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors in the appeal did not require the rain catchment. They did require storage, but not rain catchment. So I don't think it's entirely fair to say that we've been consistent about requiring rain catchment when there's wells. I know there's been that discussion, but that is not a policy or a regulatory direction that the county has chosen to go at this point.
And that's fine that you've provided that clarification, because I wasn't aware of that. And I just want to make sure that we're consistent, whether we're consistent this way or that way, that we don't sometimes require something and other times we don't.
Yeah, no, thanks. Commissioner Mulder.
So I mean, in my notes, I did say minimal water storage, and then I went into the evidence that's submitted with the hydrological study and all that stuff and read through it. It has a really nice cross-section, and from the way, I'm not a professional in that aspect, but the way I read it is there's no connectivity.
Right.
So the minimal water storage concern in my notes, it kind of negates that. If there was potential or a high likelihood, then I'd be concerned. But I feel by having professionals submit evidence for us, we need to stick with the professionals' opinions. And the biggest thing for me on this project was honestly the conversion evaluation report, and then going through the conditions of approval of knowing that if this project's approved as is, those flats, all that woody material has to be pulled out and regraded and compacted and signed off by an engineer. And then by an engineer agreeing to that, the grading plan, maybe I understand the rules wrong, but if that fails, like if that grading plan fails, then I think it's the engineer. But maybe I'm wrong. So that I'm looking at the environmental impact. Like the water for me wasn't the big concern. It was the grading, and like, hey, we can get this fixed and we can actually improve the environment and reduce potential sediment. So that's where I'm at with it.
But just to be clear, you're satisfied by the condition that we have associated with that
100%.
Yeah.
Like I read through it because it basically says everything that the RPF prescribed you have to do.
You have to do, exactly.
And then the county says you have to permit that grading, which the county, from my experience, they make you get an engineer to sign off on the grading plan. So.
Okay, thanks. Well, so are we ready to move this forward?
I would make a motion to adopt the resolution, which does the following: finds that the Planning Commission has considered the addendum to the mitigative negative declaration for the commercial and medical marijuana land use ordinance that was prepared for the Willow Creek Ventures LLC project, and find that the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance, and approves the conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Thank you. We have a motion. Can we get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Before we go to a vote, I do see that Director Ford has his hand up. So Director Ford, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that that motion included modifying the condition relative to the firewater storage from 2,500 gallons to 5,000 gallons.
Yes, that did, and I apologize for not calling that out, but thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Director Ford. Yes, okay. With that said, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a vote on this?
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Ivor Scobdell,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, let's see what more we can get through in the 20 minutes or so remaining. The next one that was pulled from consent is the Freedly Minor Subdivision and Coastal Development Permit. That was pulled by a member of the public and I think perhaps by a member of the commission as well. So could we get a brief staff report on this one?
Yes, we can. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Des Johnston, Senior Planner, Humboldt County. This is the Freedly Minor Subdivision and Coastal Development Permit application. The project site is located in an unincorporated area of Eureka, Myrtletown. The land use designation is residential, medium density, and the zoning is R2 with a 5,000 square foot minimum parcel size. The minor subdivision would split a 12,612 square foot parcel into two parcels, both of which are over the 5,000 square foot minimum. Parcel 1 is developed with an existing single family house already. Parcel 2 then would allow for a future home site. There is water and sewer service there provided by Humboldt Community Services District. And this area is within the coastal zone, and that's why it requires a coastal development permit. This is an image of the proposed tentative map. There are two lots shown there. The lot split conforms to the designation of the general plan for medium density. It is consistent with the R2 zone district's minimum parcel size of 5,000 square feet. It conforms to the county subdivision code and the Humboldt area plan, which is also the local coastal plan. Comments were received from County Public Works with the standard list of conditions applicable to minor subdivision. The three local tribes responded that they have no concerns and do want the inadvertent discovery protocol in place, and it will be. There were no other agency comments. A neighbor submitted a request yesterday that was provided to the commissioners requesting that a condition of approval be applied to proposed parcel 2 that would disallow a 2-story house on that future parcel for the reason that it may block sun from the backyard. The neighbor is to the west or to the left of the map as it's presented. So staff looked into that, and so the Subdivision Map Act and the County Subdivision Code do require that solar access, which is basically not allowing shading, be required for major subdivisions, that is subdivisions of 5 or more parcels, and that could affect street layout as well as orientation of lots. But that does not apply to minor subdivision. And so staff sees no legislative support to require that as a condition. So staff recommends approval of Freedly 17910 tentative subdivision map and coastal development permit with the 6 recommended conditions in your staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Are there questions for Mr. Johnson?
I just wanted to ask about the solar shading requirements, if they were applicable. I know they're very convoluted, that on a certain day, it can't cover more than a certain percentage, but is it of the neighboring building, or is the yard a component of that solar shading requirement?
Good question.
It actually, the law for major subdivisions refers to heating and cooling opportunities for buildings, and it doesn't specify yard areas.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions for staff? No? Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnston, if you would give us back our screen.
Oh.
No problem. And then I will see if there's anyone, well, yes, so we will now go to public comment from members of the public. This is your chance to comment on this project or ask questions. The first hand up is Doug Holsclaw. Go ahead, sir.
Chair, if I could, normally it would be the applicant's
I'm so sorry.
prerogative.
You're right. I just remembered that we should first give the applicant a chance as to speak before other public comments. So thank you for catching me on that. Do we have the applicant on Zoom or in the room? Oh, sir, yes, go ahead.
I'm the agent for the applicant?
Yes, that's just as good. We would invite you first to speak on this project with any comments that you may have or additional information about it.
Okay, yeah. My name is Michael Pulley. I'm a professional land surveyor with Points West Surveying. I'm the agent for the Friedleys on this project. As we know, basically the project was pulled because of the comment asking for a requirement for any construction on the new parcel to be created to be restricted to a single story. I don't really find that to be a reasonable requirement, because any one of the parcels that surround this parcel under the R2 zoning that they share would be allowed to build a structure to a 35-foot maximum height under the zoning law. This parcel is zoned R2, where we're looking for residential 2-family, and construction of a duplex would be far more efficient if you were able to have a 2-story construction. And really, in my mind, if a neighbor would like to take a property right from this property owner, then that's a negotiation between that property owner and this one. He could purchase a covenant that would require that the lot be only 1 story when it's constructed, or perhaps buy an additional easement for where the house might be located or the structure. But to take away a property right from this owner as a condition of a subdivision where that's not anything that's required in the subdivision ordinance just seems very inappropriate to me, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's any questions for the agent, we can ask you now.
I know this requires surmising what you just said, but it's fair to say that you potentially may have plans to build to 2 stories and you're not willing to.
I don't know what the Friedleys' plan is with the parcel going forward, if they intend to sell it as a bare parcel to a developer or if they intend to develop it themselves. So I don't really have any idea of what the future development of the parcel would look like, but I just know that in either case, that would be a diminishment of property value and property rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mulder.
I'd like to elaborate on that one a little bit. What I heard you say, in not just these parcels or these potential 2 parcels, also the neighboring parcels all share the same zoning of R2, which the property right is 35 feet in elevation.
Yeah, in this area, the R2 zoning is basically, we're at the corner of Quaker and 18th. So going north from there and going west from there, the properties share that R2 zoning, which is a 35-foot maximum height. Around, now to the east and to the south, the parcels are zoned R1, which also has a 35-foot maximum height under the zoning code.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any further questions for the applicant's agent? Thank you, sir. And if necessary, we could bring you up again if you wish to say anything more after other public comment has been received.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll now continue to other public comments. Now it is your turn, Mr. Holsclaw. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, it's my pleasure to address the commission, and I certainly mean no disrespect to anyone here. I will admit to my naivety in some of these proceedings. The surveyor mentioned the removal of property rights. That's not the goal here. So we heard what the downside to restricting to single story is. They'd like to put two-story stuff in. I think that there's some unintentional consequences that no one really knows about, like the fact that my yard is going to be shaded and I will no longer have, my house right now is on 18th Street, and so it's a south-facing lot. So the sun from the south is now blocked. If a two-story structure goes in to my east, I will now have the sun blocked from the east and the west and basically have no sun in my backyard. And I see that as taking away some of the value from my property, actually. I know that that's not codified in the law, and I understand that the law is important and the codification is important, but I believe that there are some circumstances here that that ask to be spoken to, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk in those. I've lived in this house for about 30 years now. We've made some improvements, and I can say without any reservation that if a two-story building goes into that location, it's gonna, I'm not even gonna want to live here. And I've been a pretty good neighbor all along. So I don't have any beef with the Friedleys about this. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to entertain possibly some type of an easement for a one-story. I'm not sure. I contacted them and I was unable to discern, other than that they were not at this point putting the property on the market. I would like for this to go through. I think that the subdivision should go through, and I believe that a single family dwelling or even a two-family dwelling that was one story would suit everyone's needs just fine, and it would not impact, I guess what we could say is my happiness, a little piece of paradise that you kind of work for all your life, and you're retired and you're gonna live there. I don't know, I don't know whether this will go through, whether this will be rejected, but I would like everyone to know that it's a real concern and at least have that acknowledged. And also, as I said, I would entertain making some sort of an arrangement with the owner, if that was possible.
Okay.
May I comment further if there is some further discussion? Or am I done now?
I'm afraid you're done now. You have 15 more seconds.
Okay, well, I'm going to give over the 15 seconds to whoever speaks next.
Okay, we appreciate your public comment. Thank you, sir. The next one with a hand raised is Mia Fromm.
Hi, I'm Maya.
Maya.
I'm homeowner on of the property that shares the north border of the proposed subdivision. I've lived here since 2008, and I'm just basically speaking tonight some similar things of what Doug just spoke about. My house is on that north side of it, so it's the south facing side of my home that would be possibly impacted if there was a two-story building that would be built. I think that it would definitely, it affect me and my children's well-being and my property. I plan to put solar panels on in the near future, so that would possibly impact that, especially in the winter months. I grow food in my backyard as well. Not only would north-facing windows take away all of my and my three children's privacy, but I have an extremely shy, special needs autistic son that is constantly in the backyard and sees it as his safe space. He would not want to be in the yard any longer because it would be very upsetting to have strangers watching him. My neighborhood is currently considered pretty light residential. And I think it would just overall, kind of create a negative impact, not only to my home, but also some of the surrounding properties. I have a well-developed landscaped backyard. And I think it would have a significant impact on my home's value. And I completely understand more housing is needed. And I feel the same way. I feel that there is plenty of room on the proposed empty lot to build a large single-story dwelling. Yeah, I think that's about it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, and we have one more hand raised. That is Mr. Sawatsky. Please go ahead.
Very briefly here, we all live in society and we all have rules and regulations, and the zoning and the requirements are set in pretty well in stone. The person's not coming through for you for a variance. Everybody else in the area, if they purchased their property and did due diligence and research, would find they probably have, I don't know, in this area, 5-foot setbacks. In other words, any structure could be 2-story at that particular height. And that's just the way things are zoned. If they wish to have things zoned differently or have a certain thing, they have to go through the process. And so I suggest that I support staff's support of this, staff's recommendations on this topic. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing no other hands raised, no one else in the audience wishing to comment, I will close public comment. We have just a few minutes left before we have to be out of here, so let's see if we can resolve this one. Yes, Commissioner Mitchell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This reminds me of a situation where a group of neighbors have their houses who just happen to be facing upon a nice open meadow, and they get used to having the views of the meadow and the animals, and then someday the property owner of that meadow decides to subdivide it or do whatever's allowed via the zoning, and it's upsetting, but ultimately private property owners have the rights through the zoning and general plan to do with what is allowed by county code. Mm-hmm. We talked about potentially, perhaps the two neighbors can work together to purchase that type of restriction, but that's beyond our jurisdiction. And just for the sake of what time it is, I'm going to go ahead and offer a motion that we adopt the resolution, make the required findings, and approve the minor subdivision and coastal development permit.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion that we'd like to have on this motion?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I did have the opportunity to drive by the neighborhood today. I just want to note that there are several 2-story houses in the neighborhood, single-story and 2-story. Some of those 2-story houses are by addition of a second story onto a single-story house, mm-hmm. which any one of these homeowners could potentially do. Mm-hmm. There are also a lot of large trees in the area, and by the way, anybody can landscape in their backyard and also plant trees that mm-hmm. Sometimes create morning or evening shading on adjoining properties. So I don't think it would be appropriate, and that's why I'm supporting the motion as made and support the staff recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment before we go to a vote? Seeing none. Tripp, could we get a roll call vote on this motion?
Thomas Mulder.
Yes.
Ivor Scobdall.
Yes.
Noah Levy.
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill.
Yes.
Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
And Brian Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. The Freedley Minor Subdivision and Coastal Development Permit is approved with staff recommendation, with staff, as recommended by staff. We do have a couple of other items left that we pulled from consent that we are going to have to continue to the next meeting. Director Ford?
Chair, if I could.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be February 16th.
Okay, yes. We will go ahead and, yes, Commissioner Mulder.
Through the chair, don't we have a meeting February 2nd?
So
Cancel
the
for
only
lack of
report I
progress.
have for you tonight is to indicate we didn't have enough items to notice a public meeting for. We only had 4 new business items, so we didn't notice it. The previous practice has been if there's not at least 5, we don't notice for the meeting. So we didn't notice for a February 2nd meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, Commissioner Mitchell, did you?
I wanted to make a motion to continue Punta Cana LLC conditional use permit. I wanted to move that we continue items 5 and 6 from the consent agenda to February 17th. 16th.
We get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Just, can we get a vote to continue those 2 items to February 16th?
I just,
Sorry.
Excellent, thank you.
just quick, I won't be here for those meetings.
For the
Or that
16th?
meeting, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Don't worry. I made all these nice notes for study work.
Huh, darn.
Alrighty, so roll call real quick. Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Ivor Scovdall,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Those 2 items are continued to the 16th. Now, I see people putting on their coats, but I do just want to see if, very quickly, if Director Ford, under report from planner, do you have anything you wish to report to us tonight?
I don't have anything additional to report. I mentioned the February 2nd. County Counsel Natalie Duke was going to make a presentation tonight on the new rules regarding hybrid remote meetings, but we will do that on the 16th.
Okay, but since you bring that up, just to be clear, as of February 16th, will it still be possible for a commissioner to participate remotely or not?
It goes into effect at the end of February.
Got it. Okay, so we will have that discussion at the next meeting.
Yep.
Right? Oh, yeah, well, I'll, last item before we adjourn is item K, Planning Commissioner discussion items. Commissioner Mitchell.
I just wanted to offer a heartfelt congratulations to Director Ford and his family.
I will second that. He has a grandbaby.
Yeah. New member of the family.
Great.
Congratulations, Director Ford.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mulder. Oh, no?
After he said thank you, so I just was making sure you. I don't know who'd we'd request or where, but it's planning. Or we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mics. They haven't, since that one scratchy mic. They haven't replaced one up here, so sometimes we end up sharing when we have a full house or when we don't realize how to shift microphones. So
Yeah.
just putting that on the record.
Thank you for bringing that up. I noticed that earlier tonight, and of course, we did have only 6 people tonight, but
I can ask again.
going forward, yes, we would really appreciate having a 7th mic up here. It is somewhat difficult to have to squish together or trade back and forth, so
See what I can do.
thank you. All right, and with that, we will adjourn the meeting until, and the next one will be February 16th. Thank you all very much.